Welcome back to HPP, the podcast that talks with tomorrow's stars. I am Rich Harris, and thank you for joining us again. Today, I am joined by Drew Barton, and later we'll be joined by Cam Reel. Also, we have a special guest today, Cade Pierce, the reigning Ivy League MVP. So got a big show for you, and we're also going to be breaking down the offseason grades for the Western Conference. We did the Eastern Conference a few days ago. So, Drew, I know you did something fun since we just, it's only been a few days, but you did something really fun, something I wish I could have done.
Yeah, my last 2 days have been pretty jam-packed. So on Tuesday, it was my last official day at Menlo, which was their fall athlete check-in day. So it was kind of a hectic day of all the fall athletes coming back. And so I got that wrapped up, and then I went to the Foo Fighters show in Concord at the Concord Pavilion. And it's funny because so my girlfriend's favorite band, he's a huge music guy. He is forever been any band you can think of, the guy has tracked him down and seen him. He's seen Pearl Jam. I'm pretty sure he saw Nirvana when they were he's just a big rock and roll guy, and his favorite band of all time is the Foo Fighters. I love the Foo Fighters as well. And it's funny because we had actually bought tickets, him and I and my girlfriend, to go up to Seattle to see them when they were playing Seattle, because it's the birth of the Foo, and my girlfriend's family is from up there. He's actually seen them, I think, 7 or 8 times. My girlfriend's seen them 4. And so that was our original plan all summer. And just funny enough, the Concord Pavilion is 5 minutes from my girlfriend's house. It's a very small venue, and they decided to book a last minute show there. So we sold our Seattle tickets, got Concord Pavilion tickets in the pit. And we basically found out the only reason that they played is because in a very if you're a fan, you kind of know this is their MO, but one of the Foo, I don't know who it was, but one of the guys had seen a show there years ago and was like, yeah, I like the spot. And so they all decided well, why don't we just play there? Because they didn't have any Bay Area stops on the tour, which was a bit unusual.
Sweet.
So we were able to basically not have to go up to Seattle, 5 minutes from my girlfriend's house. And I was second. I mean, basically you had Dave Grohl, the rail, one row of fans, and then me. So I was front and center. This is my second time seeing them, and they put on, I believe, to be the best show. Again, very much on par with their whole MO and just kind of what they believe music should be. They came out and played basically 3 hours straight.
Wow.
Dave did not leave the stage until they ended and they came back for the encore. He did a kind of a couple of songs, solo acoustic, to give, I think, the rest of the band just a break for a couple of minutes, 10 minutes. But Dave Grohl did not leave the stage from when they came on basically the entire night. Played, I mean, you can name pretty much, they played stuff that I hadn't heard, and I'm a pretty big fan. I mean, obviously they did all the big hits, Learn to Fly, was what sent the crowd into a frenzy. Everlong is their kind of always closing song. But I mean, they played stuff off pretty much every album. And it was pretty awesome. To be that close it's pretty crazy, right? Especially at such a small venue. I mean, I could have probably reached out, and if security wouldn't have snapped my arm in half, I could have reached out and high five Dave Grohl. So it was pretty cool to be that close to and one of my favorite. I mean, as much as we talk about basketball and sports, Dave Grohl is probably if I had to do a top 3 have a beer list, Dave Grohl is on that list for me. So that was awesome.
For sure. Yeah. Dave Grohl, Bill Walton, and I'm not sure who else.
Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty solid start.
They would be, of course, Bill passed away, and it is funny, we were talking about, because I told Foo Fighters are one of my, if not my favorite band, one of my favorite bands. I mean, top 5 for sure. And I'd say probably they're my favorite band, but I don't know. But I gave you a list of 11 shows that I never got to see. And of course they were on it. Nirvana was on it. Pearl Jam was on it. So yeah, that's I'm happy for you. That sounds awesome.
I mean, it was cool because I've seen them, and the first time I saw them in kind of a tragic twist, I always joke, years ago, my uncle is a big DJ in the Bay Area, and so he basically had this gig where he basically got access to a private concert because I helped him set it up, where I could have got to see the Foo and the Killers. And I waited in line to get my verified ID pass, but they'd only given out a couple hundred of them. and I forgot my ID in my car. And by the time I got my
Oh,
ID and came back, so I missed it. So that was like my chance to see the Foo Fighters and the Killers in like a private 1,000-person max setting. Missed out on that. I finally go and see them a couple years ago for the first time, and it was the last time Taylor Hawkins played with the band on American soil. They then after that date they took off for the international branch. So they took, or obviously he passed away when they were in,
right.
I think, Colombia. So and my girlfriend's sister was with us, and she actually caught his drumsticks in there. 'Cause we were front row.
Nice.
We were like fifth row there. So we've been pretty close. So yeah, if you haven't seen them, I highly recommend it. Like they're one of those bands that I think transcends. Like I know rock and roll kind of intimidates some people, or they think it's old school, or they're not into it. But like they put on such a good show with such good energy that like I don't really care what genre you like. Like if you can see the Foo Fighters, like do it. You will not regret it.
Intimidates people. That's
I have people I was sending some videos to people, like posted on like my Instagram story, and people are like, oh, you're like an old man, like the Foo Fighters. And I'm like, dude, like
oh,
old man,
oh,
like
oh, oh, oh.
yeah, and I also think like like you think rock and roll, and if you've only heard like one or two songs, some of the more popular songs are more of the upbeat, like more traditional like rock,
Right,
and
right.
sometimes Dave gets up there and just kind of lets a nice little scream out on the mic, and that might kind
Mhm.
of turn some people off if they don't really understand like their vibe. But I mean,
Right.
if you listen to their entire discography of music, they've got songs for
Well,
all over the world.
his roots come from punk, you know.
Exactly. I mean, Nirvana and Pearl Jam were like the birth of grunge
Right. And
rock.
they
So
liked, and they followed the bands that I grew up with, and
yeah,
I saw I can't tell you how many times I saw the Ramones. Okay.
yeah, yeah,
And we didn't go to see the Ramones because we were like in love with their music. We went to the Ramones so we could slam dance or moshing, what they
yeah,
call it
yeah,
now.
absolutely.
And then back then you could actually stage dive. You could
Yeah,
actually get up on the stage and jump off of the crowd. They catch you and pass you around.
yeah.
And one time though, a bouncer, I guess I got too close to one of the Ramones or something, and he fucking shoved me off when I wasn't ready. I landed face first on top of somebody's head, and I bit my tongue so bad that
Oh,
I thought it was gonna like fall off. And oh my god, did it bleed? I was just like, my shirt was covered with blood, and yeah, it was a mess.
the
But
Ramones probably put on a pretty cool show. Brain
oh,
Hanging
they
Upside Down
did.
is one of my that's one of my favorite rock.
It was
Brain
just
Hanging Upside Down is one of my favorite rock songs. It's my favorite Ramones song for
you
sure.
went to Ramon shows just to raise hell, in a good way.
Yeah,
In a good way.
yeah,
You know what
yeah,
I'm saying?
absolutely.
Um, so the other in the band I've followed, more in my older years has been the Dropkick Murphys, which are like it's like Irish folk mixed with punk. And my two favorite things. And so yeah. Have you heard of the Dropkicks? Their song
I
the song the Patriots come out to, Boo Boo in Notre Dame.
yes, yes,
I'm
yes.
shipping off to
Okay,
Boston.
yeah, yeah.
That's their big hit.
Okay, so
They
then
have a
I've
lot of
definitely
great.
heard some of their
Yeah,
stuff.
check out the song "Rose Tattoo." Uh,
Rose Tattoo. I'm
yeah,
always down for some more rock and roll because all the subgenres of rock are pretty awesome.
yeah. "Rose Tattoo" is just like a catchy, punky Irish folk song, and if you don't like "Rose Tattoo," there's something wrong with it. All right, so let's get started. I think Cam sometimes gets stuck in traffic in Denver, so
Yeah.
I assume that's what's going on. But we'll start with our off-season. Oh, you know what? Before we do that, let's roll the interview that I did earlier with Cade Pierce, great kid. Like I said, reigning MVP of the Ivy League, a legitimate prospect, and Princeton has two. They also have guard Zaven Lee. So Princeton should be very good again this season. So we'll roll that interview now. Our special guest today is the reigning Ivy League Player of the Year, Cade Pierce, who just finished competing for Team USA in the under 23 3-on-3 tourney in Mexico. Last season as a sophomore for Princeton, Cade averaged 16.6 points, 9.2 rebounds, and 3.2 assists per game. He led the Ivy in field goal percentage, finished fifth with free throw percentage. By the way, the field goal percentage was 55. Free throw percentage, he was fifth with 77, and he made 34% of his threes. In terms of metrics, Cade led the conference in both player efficiency rating and win shares. finished in the top 3 for offensive rating, defensive rating, and rebound percentage, and finished in the top 10 for plus minus and assist percentage. Cade, welcome to the show. How you doing?
Not too bad. How are you? Thanks for having me.
I am good. It's a little warm today here in Jersey, but other than that, all's good. So all the websites, no matter where you go, list you as Caden, but I gather from your father that you prefer Cade.
Yeah, honestly, my mom calls me Kate. My dad calls me Cade. I just say Caden. That's my birth name. Keep it simple. But yeah, those close to me pretty much all call me Cade.
Except for mom?
Yeah, I mean she'll call me Cade. Just kind of switches it up. It's a day by day thing.
Okay.
But yeah, so
Well, with my mom, I was Rich or Richie when
there you go.
she was happy with me, and when she wasn't happy with me, I was Richard. So
Exactly. Yeah, mine's it's Caden when she's happy, Caden Matthew when she's a little more direct. So
all right. So speaking of your family, you are surrounded by athletes at home, including one who's a professional. Can you talk about your family a little bit?
absolutely. Yeah, like you said, surrounded with a family of athletes. From the time I was pretty much born, it's all I've really known is athletics in general, all sports. Growing up, my parents encouraged us to play pretty much everything growing up, not to specialize too early. And so, my brothers and I all played basketball, football, baseball, golf. I'm a huge golfer still to this day. Um, and then later on in high school, we started to specialize. But even in high school, I played two sports. I played basketball and golf for 4 years in high school, which not a lot of people know about me. But yeah, so it's athletics has been obviously a huge part of my family, and being able to grow up with parents who were athletes, and then obviously older brothers who have paved the way a little bit before me has definitely, made my path a little smoother, and I've learned things along the way that have helped me transition into college.
Sure, sure. Are you the youngest of the children?
Yes, sir. I am.
Okay. And including mom and dad, who's the most competitive in general at home?
That's a tough question. I would say I probably can't answer that question. I think if I feel like it's almost a competition for who's the most competitive. So if I answer that question, I might hurt somebody's feelings. So
All right, fair enough. Does everyone play golf?
yeah, so pretty my oldest brother Justin is kind of getting into it right now. My middle brother Alec, who plays with the Colts, he's been picking it up as he's been a professional with the Colts, and he's had some free time in the summers. And my mom and dad, my dad plays a lot all the time. My mom is starting to get into it as well. And yeah, so me and my dad are the two big golfers in the family.
Okay.
I think my parents always tell this story, but I'm obviously the youngest, and I'm 6 years younger than Justin, who's the oldest, and 4 years younger than Alex. So a pretty significant age difference. And my parents would always say that it was cheaper for them to drop me off at the golf course than it was to get a babysitter for me. So turns out I would just get dropped off at the golf course with like $5 in my hand for maybe a hot dog for lunch, and then I'd go, play. Turns out actually a couple of my good buddies from home one of them plays golf in college, and a couple of them, played golf pretty seriously in high school. So I would go with them for 2, 3, 4 hours to the golf course, and then my parents were like, "Dang, turns out he's actually pretty good at golf."
Really?
So it's kind of funny story, but yeah, I love the game.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. My family was at least on my dad's side was really into golf too. So I've been playing it since a young age, but I had to quit for a while. But anyway, I digress. All right. So what was it like playing in the U23 3-on-3 in Mexico, and how did you and the team fare?
It was amazing. I mean, being able to, wear USA across your chest is not something that I actually have the shirt on right now.
Nice.
It's not something that you get to do every day. And so it was definitely a special experience. And also being able to travel outside of the country with a group of guys who, obviously Dalen, my teammate, played, so that was nice. I had a comfortable, familiar face with me there. But all the guys on the team were really cool and made it enjoyable. And then also our head coach was Craig Moore, who has some Princeton connections as well. He played under Mitch at Northwestern. And Coach Henderson at Northwestern, and then he actually, I think, was on staff at Princeton for maybe a year. So he was a great guy. It was my first time meeting him, but all in all, it was an unbelievable trip. And so my team, we played. It was the FIBA U23 Nations League Americas tour is what it was called. It's a long game, but long story short, we were playing North and South America teams. So we played Argentina, Chile, Mexico, Puerto Rico, and the Cayman Islands. And so this event was essentially a qualifier event for the World Cup, which is in September. So the team that won gets to go to the World Cup, which is in September. And so
where is that going to be held at? So
the World Cup is going to be in Mongolia.
Wow.
Which, kind of on the other side of the world. So
yeah,
Team USA, we took it home, but I'm not sure. They haven't decided what the teams are going to be for that Mongolia trip, because it might be a little difficult as we're getting ready for the season. Not sure if I'd be allowed to go, or if the other guys on the team would be allowed to go. So still waiting on the word on that. But overall, all in all, it was super cool experience, and I'm so grateful for it.
Yeah. Who else was on the team beside Dalen?
So two kids from Butler, Finley Bizjack and Bowden Kapke were their names.
Okay.
And then one kid from Trinity University in Texas, actually Division III school, but he had played in this event last year, so he had some 3-on-3 experience. His name is Jacob Harvey. He was very good. And then
he's a D3 player?
Division III, yeah. Well, the tricky thing is most Division I guys are at school in the summer, and so it's difficult for the organizers and the people at USA Basketball to organize a team targeting Division I guys, because most of the time they're at school, and their coaches probably won't let them leave for 2 weeks. So yeah, Jacob had played last year, and he was a really good piece for us. And we actually had a sixth player, Bryce Butler from College of Charleston. But he unfortunately got injured in practice when we were in Phoenix, so he wasn't able to travel to Mexico City, which is a shame. But
so yeah. On and off the court, did anything unexpected happen along your journey?
Man, the trip was so much fun, and I think hanging out with the guys and the coaching staff in general was an amazing experience. But actually, one thing that was crazy was our assistant coach actually proposed to his now fiance about halfway through our trip. We were on an off day, so we were visiting like the ancient Aztec ruins, which are about an hour outside of Mexico City. And so we were walking around, and he told us he was going to do it. And so we were all kind of just waiting around, and he got on one knee and did it, and she said yes. So it was a cool experience for sure.
Nice. So beside the obvious, because I'm not overly familiar with 3-on-3, I actually one of our first guests ever, you may know him, Tyler Hagedorn, played for South Dakota State.
Okay.
About 6'10", really good shooter. And he played 3-on-3 for, I believe, Team USA, maybe last year or the year before, I think.
Okay.
But bottom line, I'm not very familiar with the rules. I know, obviously, you're playing in half court, but what are some of the significant rule differences, and how does it affect your personal play style?
Absolutely. So if you've never watched 3-on-3, you'll learn very quickly that it's unbelievably fast paced.
Right. I have noticed that.
Yes. So It's first to 21 by ones and twos. So 3-pointers, or I guess 2-pointers, are valued heavily. It's first to 21 or it's 10 minutes. So 10 minutes, whatever happens first. So it's a maximum 10-minute game. So if time runs out, it's whoever's winning at that point. Or if you get to 21 first, then you'll win. But as far as gameplay goes, it's obviously 3-on-3, it's half court, but there's no real stoppages in play. So if I score a layup, the other team can get it right out of the net, and they just have to clear it behind the 3-point line. And so it's ridiculously fast paced, and
like we used to play on the playground.
100%, exactly. So it was quite nostalgic a little bit, just because you almost. And the other thing is, there's a 12-second shot clock.
12 seconds.
You can't really, and the clock starts once you get the ball out of the net. So by the time you clear it, it might be 9 or 10 seconds.
Right.
And so I really enjoyed it because you don't really have time to think out there. Like you don't have time to think about like the quality of the shot you're taking. If you get somewhat decent look, just shoot it. And nobody's ever going to get mad at you for shooting it, because likely if you pass up that shot, you're going to turn it over, or not get another good shot. So, but 3-on-3, it's super fun. And I think it suited my game very well, because it is such a fast-paced game that oftentimes there's not many big guys who play, like, quote-unquote big post centers, because it is such a fast-paced game, and shooting is so heavily prioritized. And so
you don't have time to wait for somebody to make post moves.
Exactly. And so for the most part, I was probably the biggest guy on the floor at all times. But it was a cool experience. It was my first time playing, and so there was obviously a little bit of a learning curve, and these other countries had far better, they were further along in their 3-on-3 careers, and so they knew a little bit more about what they were doing, but we picked it up pretty quickly, and we took home the W, which is all that matters.
Right. So I learned something recently that surprised me. You are the all-time leader in both assists and steals at Glenbard West High School in Illinois. And, that surprises me just because at Princeton, you've mainly been playing the 4 and the 5. What was your role in high school?
Yeah, I pretty much was on my high school team, which had incredible success my senior year. We won the state championship 37-1. We lost one game to Sierra Canyon, which was Bronny James's team. But we were undefeated in Illinois, and I was our point guard. So crazy. Yeah, our team was huge. Our up was 6'4", 6'6", which was I was about 6'6" at the time, 6'5", and 6'7", 6'8", 6'11". So we were huge, and so I was kind of our quote unquote point guard. I mean, it was, if a team was pressuring us, then whoever had the best matchup would kind of bring the ball up the floor.
Right.
But yeah, so I was pretty much more of a facilitator. Honestly, coming to Princeton in this past year was the first time that I've really had a role where I was like the main facilitator and scorer. Or at least in AAU, I played with the Illinois Wolves, and I was more of a role player. We ended up winning the Under Armour National Championship, but I was kind of, playing defense, getting rebounds, shooting corner threes, and kind of more of a glue guy.
Mm-hmm.
But going back to the point guard role, I grew up kind of small. I was a late bloomer, and so I had always kind of had a foundation of like playmaking, dribbling, and passing, and so I was comfortable, running the point for my high school team. And then obviously I grew taller to about 6'6", 6'7", like I am now, and so a little bit of those point guard skills transferred over, and so I think it's been a blessing that I've kind of been able to have the ball in my hands, and then also learn to play a little bit off the ball like I have in college.
Yeah, I would agree. By the way, I didn't mention this stat at the top, but after I read that statistic, I looked at your synergy stuff, and you ranked at the 95th percentile for points and assists per possession. So that's PPPA for short. And you're also, I looked up your assist turnover at that time, and it was 1.8 last season. So well done.
Thank you.
Last season, in my opinion, the Tigers played well enough to earn an at-large bid. You guys defeated Rutgers, Duquesne, Yale, Cornell. You finished the regular season with a 24-3 record. However, in Ivy Madness, you lost a close one to Brown, a team that you had already beaten twice. I know that one really stung. And Coach Henderson was visibly upset at the post-game press conference. And at the time, you really don't know what to ask somebody, after a devastating loss like that. So I tried to do Coach a favor, but I don't think he appreciated it. I basically, and I meant it when I said it. I said, when I asked my question, I said it felt like from the start that this just wasn't the Tigers' day. And what I meant was it seemed like every bounce that could have gone to your direction went their direction. Every ball that they shot went around the rim and dropped in. Every ball you shot went around the rim and fell out. It just felt that way. It's just like, it's just not in the cards. So what did you take away from that game?
Yeah, that game was obviously a brutal one. It stung a little bit, stung a lot for certain. But I think, having some time removed from that game, I've learned that that's kind of the beauty of basketball in a sense. Like the team that's supposed to win doesn't always win. And that's the beauty of the game, that you have to come up and come ready to play every single game. And if, you come out a little slow and maybe your shots aren't falling and theirs are, it's very easy to, slip up and lose a game in a big moment. And that's obviously what happened that day. And so, but I think at the end of the day, it's important that happened to us. It's my freshman year, it was pretty smooth sailing. We had some ups and downs throughout the season, but then we made it into Ivy League, the Ivy tournament, and then March Madness, and obviously had a great run. But I think it's important to experience some adversity, and obviously we would have liked to make March Madness again, but I think it'll make us stronger going forward. So,
right. It's a damn shame that there are certain conferences that no matter what you do, you're predestined. I mean, this happened in Indiana State last year too. You're predestined to get one bid. I argue against that every year, but I just happened in that situation for you guys when you've already proven to be the best team in the conference. All right, you did that. You were the first seed, but still, you have to be perfect in the tourney in order to make March Madness. I would think that must create a tremendous amount of pressure, uncomfortable pressure.
Yeah, it's obviously it's a shame that you win you win the league outright, and you're not necessarily rewarded like other conferences are. But I think it's having to win Ivy Madness is something that we signed up for coming to Princeton. I didn't expect to get in that large bid. I didn't, expect to just make it to March Madness easily. And so while it would be nice last year if we were to run it back and we get the at-large bid, who knows what happens. But it's what we signed up for at Princeton, and we're thankful for being in a conference that is super tough. Obviously, the last two seasons, teams in the Ivy League have made a run. So I think the Ivy League is starting to, gain a little bit of credibility. And so obviously I hope that continues moving forward. And maybe there's a day where you get the 2-bid Ivy League. We'd like to see it going forward. But, until then, we'll continue to try to win that Ivy tournament. So.
Right. 3 of your top 7 players in minutes played per game last year are gone, leading off with Matt Mush Alako, who has moved on to Notre Dame for his grad season. The same with Zach Martini, who's now at Rutgers, and underrated forward Jake Scott, who I really didn't notice until I saw him in person, but he really impressed me, but he's transferred to William & Mary. I think it's safe to say that Princeton's backcourt is still in great hands. You have Xavier Lee, Blake Peters, Dalen Davis, who we talked about earlier, all returning. But I must admit, I'm concerned about the front court because it appears that a lot is going to fall on you in terms of rebounding and maybe inside scoring. So can you talk about the makeup of the team this year? Because I'm not really familiar with the new guys, or not really familiar with the guys that didn't play much last year.
Sure, absolutely. Obviously, yes, it hurts that the guys the seniors weren't able to
Right.
play their 5th year at Princeton. That's unfortunate. But I think we're gonna have a really, really strong group next year. And I think it starts with, the guys that are coming back. Obviously, we have myself, Xavier, and Dalen, Blake. We have some guys who have played a lot of minutes and are experienced, especially with dealing with some adversity like last March. And so then again, we have Devin Austin coming in, or not coming in, but returning after his knee injury his freshman year. People forget he had just come off I think an Ivy League freshman of the week award, a rookie of the week award. And so he's he's a bright piece for us, and we're really excited to have him back. And I think we have a lot of young talent coming in as well. It's it's hard to tell, like, by looking at highlights or film and whatnot, how good they are going to be when they get to campus. But they certainly have a lot of talent, and we're excited to have them on our team. And you mentioned the size. I think we do have, Jacob Huggins last year played a significant role, and I think with the help of Devin Austin coming back, he's another bigger body that can help get rebounds and handle front court duties a little bit. We have CJ Happy coming in, who's going to be a good freshman for us, but hopefully he comes in and he's physical and can hang inside as a freshman. That's not always the easiest thing to do, but I mean we have a really talented team, and we're excited about this upcoming year, and we should win a lot of games if we get everything together.
Right. Is there anyone, because you didn't really mention positions, but is there anyone who's like 6'8" and up who could give you some rim protection and grab some rebounds, take some pressure off of you in that department, and maybe even give you I know you're a 5-out team, but is there anybody who you could slide into the post if for some reason the shots weren't falling? You could slide it in post, and he comes in for 7 minutes a half and get you a few buckets in the paint. Is there anybody like that right now?
Yeah, sure. I think Jacob Huggins, who was a freshman last year, I haven't seen him this summer, but I've heard he's put on some weight, so hopefully that'll help his game interior wise at least. And I mentioned CJ Happy, who's a freshman coming in. They're both about 6'8", 6'9", so
Nice.
They have some size, some length, some athleticism, and so we're excited for both of them and their development. And it should. But then again, Princeton, we showed last year that being a little bit of an undersized team, you can definitely have success, and especially being a quicker team, maybe more athletic, and it allows you to fly around on defense and not necessarily have to rely on an interior presence. Playing 5-out is very difficult to guard, especially if the opposing team has a traditional center. There's always going to be some sort of mismatch, and that's something that we love to take advantage of, especially with the guard play that we have with Xavier and Dalen. Those guys, if they get a mismatch and a switch, they're tough guys to stop. I mean, I've experienced it myself. So it's we have all the right pieces, and I think we just got to put it together. And obviously, it starts in practice in October, and so we'll go from there. But really excited about this year.
Right. How much will you miss Mush? Did you play golf with him?
I never played golf with Mush, no.
But he's taken it up, I thought he told me. Am I wrong about that?
I'm not sure. I've never played golf with Mush. Maybe he's gone to Notre Dame and changed a little bit, but
well, he's good friends with Dane Goodwin, and
yeah,
and Dane's like a scratch golfer. So I thought he told me he was gonna.
I've tried to get Mush on the golf course, but he's
He never
never
would go for it.
no, yeah.
So
But who knows?
how
Maybe he's
much?
picking it up at Notre Dame.
What's that? Oh
I
yeah,
said maybe he's picking it up.
right. So how much as a player and a person will you miss him?
I'll definitely miss him a ton. I mean, obviously on the court, his play, he was unbelievable for us for the 2 years I've been there. Always seemed to hit the big shot when you needed it most.
Yes.
And but obviously his leadership is something that, I mean, his name's Mush for a reason, Mush Mouth. Never stops talking, and it's everything you want in a leader. And so sometimes when you're not having your best day, sometimes you wish he would just shut up a little bit and not talk to you. But I mean, Mush is Mush. He's always going to talk, and that's I think every great team needs a leader like him, and his leadership is so unique. It's so consistent every single day, and there's even when he's not feeling the best or he's injured or something's bothering him, his voice is always consistent, and that's something that I've tried to pick up a little bit in my game is my vocal leadership. And learning from him for 2 years is he's probably the best leader in Princeton history and the best leader I've ever been around. So definitely going to miss him for sure. And then off the court, he was the same who he was on the court. He would never stop talking, and he was a great friend, and definitely going to miss him being a part of the locker room for sure.
Right. So we'll end on a positive question. What has you the most excited about this coming season?
Man, I think we just have a lot of talent, a lot of energy coming in. We ended last year obviously not on a great note, but we still kind of have that sour taste in our mouth, that sour taste in our mouth, however you want to say it. But we're excited about this year. I think we have a lot of great pieces, and it's just about meshing together come October and November when the games start. But I'm really excited. It's been tough being at home all summer, not being able to hang out with the guys all the time. But being at home and not working out with them, I don't know where other guys are standing. I think I know a lot of guys have been putting in good work, and so I'm excited to get there in a couple weeks to start playing with those guys.
Yeah. I think you're bound to be a highly successful team. Just on the returning guys, yourself, Player of the Year, Xavier and you are both legitimate pro prospects. I think everything is in pretty good shape.
Thank you. Yeah, we're looking forward to it, and we have our sights set pretty high. We have big goals for this group and hope to attain them. So.
All righty, Cade. Hope I run into you during the season. I'm sure I will. And I want to thank you for being on the show today. And I want to wish you and the team the best. And please come back and visit us soon. This was fun.
Awesome. Thanks for having me, Rich.
All right. Thank you. All right. It was great talking to Cade. We may be, and I think we're going to be talking to Xavier Lee when we talk about the Ivy League, when we preview the Ivy League conference. So that'll be fun. All right, so Western Conference. We'll do them again in alphabetical order, and we'll start with the Dallas Mavericks. Dallas is, I'd say, they made several acquisitions that were pretty significant, and all pretty much are at the guard position but one. They acquired Quentin Grimes and the Tim Hardaway deal. They acquired Klay Thompson in a 6-team crazy deal, and Spencer Dinwiddie signed as a free agent, and they brought in Najee Marshall. It's kind of a versatile forward, can play the 3, can play the 4, and he's going to replace Derek Jones, who's probably their biggest free agent loss. They also lost Josh Green in the Klay Thompson deal. Of course, they lost Hardaway in the Grimes deal. Jones left for the Clippers as a free agent, and Markieff Morris remains unsigned. They may bring him back. In the draft, interestingly, they traded into the draft to get Francis Melvin Ajinça, I think it is, He was a wing, and he played in France. I was kind of on the fence whether he would get drafted or not. I wasn't super impressed. So I was kind of surprised that they traded in to get him. And then weirdly, he didn't play very well in summer league, and maybe they planned this all along. I don't know, but he's basically a draft and stash for them. It's just kind of weird to trade in to get a draft and stash. It's usually the type of thing where I got a draft pick. I don't have any room on my roster, so I'm going to draft a European guy and not waste his pick. So all right. So what do you think about what Dallas? Oh, I'll tell what again, 4 of us graded these individually. We looked at what happened with the teams, and our grades were very similar. It was 3 B minuses and 1 B. So we all thought they did pretty good, but not great.
Yeah, I was a B minus. I think not including Klay Thompson, I'll address that in a second as his spurned Warriors fan. But if you look at Grimes, Dinwiddie, and Marshall, I basically view it as they replaced Green. They basically found variants of Green, Hardaway, and Derrick Jones. I mean, that's literally what they did. They couldn't win it. They weren't able to win a championship with Green, Hardaway, and Jones. They got close. And so they said, okay, hey, these guys weren't able to get done. Let's just roll it back with the same exact archetype of player. And maybe, Dinwiddie did have a pretty solid run as a scoring guard there. Maybe he can recapture some of that, be the scorer, kind of on-ball creator and scorer that they kind of need whenever Luka or Kyrie aren't in the game or something happens to one of them. Grimes is going to be that 6'5", kind of 3-and-D wing. I think he's like a career 37% shooter. So just enough three-point shooting to keep you honest. I mean, he might only average on this offense, 7 points, 8 points a game, but he's 6'5", 200 pounds, can kind of give you that traditional wing. And then Marshall's going to replace Jones is kind of the, like I said, versatile forward who can play the 3, drop into the 4 if you need him to. I mean, I think the big one here is Klay Thompson. That's obviously the name that's going to catch everyone's eye. Maybe this is me being, again, a spurned Warriors fan. Like I said, I think it's a solid pickup. It just depends on what they're expecting to get from him. I think Klay is entering that era where if the expectation is Luka, Kyrie are the heliocentric, like they are the offense and everyone else has to play off them. And Klay kind of turns into hopefully the peak version of a Kyle Korver or a Joe Harris and really punishes teams for collapsing on those other two, then awesome, knock out of the park. It seemed like Klay wasn't really into that kind of role and he wanted to be more of the 2015 to 2018 Klay Thompson. If that's what they're thinking they're getting, then probably a bit of a swing and a miss. Shooting's a premium. Klay, in my opinion, is probably the second best shooter ever. If you hate him, he's in the top 5 still. So I understand that there's always value there. But that's why I went B minus instead of maybe going a little bit higher, was just that I think they did a good job. I think they're running back the same lineup or same style of team that got them to a final. Klay's kind of the one real big addition, and we'll see how it works. I think it can work really well if he buys into that, like catch and shoot, floor spacer. We saw that guys weren't able to make shots on the biggest stage. Klay's been able to do that his whole career. So, we'll see. If Klay Thompson frustrations and issues about playing time and shots and tries to take over the offense at times like he did with the Warriors, probably won't be as smooth of a transition as people are hoping for.
Yeah. The NBA, I don't know why NBA guys, are so wrapped up about playing time. I mean, really, if you want to play long, don't play more than 30 minutes a game. If you look in Europe, even really, really good players average maybe just over 20 minutes per game. And it allows them to have a nice long career. They also usually don't play 82 games, but if you're like both in Euro League and say the Spanish League, you'll get close to 80 games, but still. Yeah. So Cam has joined us, and Cam, what do you think about the Mavericks? Basically what Drew said, and I basically agree, is he basically said they've swapped players, basically, and they're probably, for example, would you rather have Klay Thompson or Tim Hardaway? Well, definitely Klay Thompson. Would you rather have Josh Green versus Quentin Grimes? I'm not so sure who, And would you rather have Derrick Jones or Najee Marshall? Who knows? But what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, just first off, just to underline your point though, Rich, like the Spurs would probably have 2 less championship appearances if they didn't play their guys that way, right, in that 30-minute range. But man, I don't know. I had a hard time scoring this offseason for the Mavs, man. I mean, Grimes is a nice pickup. I will say that. That's another guy that's like, teams have had circled for a couple seasons, or like he's got potential to be more than a role player. Or like I don't know. He's got some stuff to his game. I like that pickup, but at the same time, I mean, you could probably say the same thing about Josh Green, trading like players. I don't know. I mean, it comes down to like how much of the old Klay Thompson is there left. I mean, not to say that he had a bad season last year, but he wasn't that Klay. And I think, if you're going to score this offseason in the A range for them, he's got to be that Klay. Yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting move too. Just looking age wise, like yes, they have this timeline with Kyrie. You could argue Klay's probably on a similar timeline in terms of how long he's going to be able to play. There's still that injury risk. I don't know. I think with this core that they've developed, I mean, they've maybe got 2 seasons, maybe, to really be competitive. I mean, obviously, you're always in it if you got Luka Doncic, but you're dependent on Klay Thompson, Kyrie Irving, that level of play that they can produce. I don't know. I'm worried about it.
Yeah, I'm also worried about how much they use Luka. Again, you roll him out 35 minutes a game every night. Against, I don't know, you're playing the Wizards and he plays 35 minutes a game. Yeah, that's great if you're going for MVP, but who really gives a rat's ass about MVP when you're really the goal is the NBA championship?
Yep. And I mean, Luka's shown it multiple times now in the playoffs. Like him alone is almost enough to kind of propel you there, at least in the conversation. I think the peak of what they can be, the combination of PJ Washington really improving in the Dallas Mavericks uniform, they can be really good.
Lively's going to get better.
Lively's going to keep getting better. I undervalued him in that draft personally. I think, they're in the conversation, but I think there's a couple of teams in the West that did more to improve their team. And like, I don't know, I mean, universally, we're at a B-, 1B from Caleb. I think that's where it is. Like, Klay Thompson is a fun pickup. I think it's going to be great to see him in a new scenery. I wonder how much of a role he can really carry at this point. Right. And how much he's really going to fit with Luka and Kyrie too. I think that's also a question.
I think the fit would be fine, but both
you
and Drew are basically agreed. How much does he have left in the tank? I think at this point in his career, really, he should be coming off the bench, maybe playing in the fourth quarter. Maybe 25 minutes a night.
But I think it boils down to their logic is just Luka and Kyrie can get us to like the finals or the conference finals. We just need a guy that's been there and can make those corner threes in a hostile environment when there's 2 minutes left in the game. And for a decade, Klay Thompson's been that guy. So I think they're rolling the dice on him for those last 2 series of the season, less so the 82 games. The problem with Klay is like you still kind of need him for those 82 games with this team, and if he's not that guy, like Cam said, you're in trouble. So we'll see.
Yep. All right, so we'll move on to Cam's hometown Denver Nuggets. And the group was not very pleased with what they did this offseason. I know we weren't crazy about their draft. Well, I think their draft wasn't bad. But anyway, collectively, we really don't like what they've done. And so I will review their big newcomers are Dario Saric, power forward, center from Golden State. Not really a rim protector, something that Denver has been lacking for quite some time. They brought in Russell Westbrook after he was released by Utah. He was traded Clippers traded him Utah. Utah cut him, and then Denver signed him. In the draft, they got Deron Holmes. They moved up in the draft, and I think that's what we didn't like was the fact that they sent pick 28, 56, and then a couple of future second rounders just to move up a few spots to get Deron Holmes. And we've had Deron Holmes on the show. We really like him, but I'm not so sure you couldn't have got him at 28, and it seems like you paid a lot for him. And then in his first summer league game, he suffered a season-ending Achilles injury. Now, we're not holding that against Denver. That's not part of this grade. But that's just another thing, another piece of bad news for Denver. Some of it's their own doing. This one happens to be just, Holmes was always played every night, night in, night out for Dayton. So never showed any health issues before. They did sign two guys that we thought had a good chance to be drafted to two-way contracts. And that's PJ Hall, a power forward center. Again, not really a rim protector, to a two-way contract. And Trey Alexander, who I was very surprised wasn't drafted to a two-way contract. Trey could play point guard, shooting guard. And this team is a little thin at those positions, especially shooting guard. And the reason why they're thin at guard is because Kentavious Caldwell-Pope left in free agency to go to Orlando. Reggie Jackson was a part of the Klay Thompson deal, and then he was sent to Charlotte, who cut him, and then he signed with Philly. And also Justin Holiday has not been re-signed. Yeah, collectively, we gave them two of us gave D pluses, two gave C minuses. So, Cam, what do you think about your hometown Nuggets? In my estimation, they're going in the wrong direction for second year in a row.
I hear you there, Rich. If I could give a C, I would. I love the Westbrook fit with this team. I gotta be honest. I wanted them to sign him, when the Lakers had cut him.
Mm-hmm.
Of course they traded him, but he was then waived.
Right.
I think he really fits with some of the issues that this Nuggets team has, especially with pace. Sometimes they're just slow. Especially with Jamal Murray running the point. He's actually the slowest player to cross half court of any point guard in the league. They play.
Are you saying that? You know that statistically, or?
I do, yeah.
Wow.
Of course, the Nuggets fans like to talk about stuff like that. So
okay.
But yeah, I think, and there's times I think, especially this past season, they really missed Bruce Brown because when he was in the game, he brought a level of erratic energy that is pretty lacking with a team that's run by Jokic, who's very cerebral. He doesn't bring a lot of that energy. I think Jamal Murray is similar. He wants to get into his pick and roll, play at his own pace. KCP doesn't handle the ball a whole lot. I don't know. I think it's going to really help this team's bench a lot to have Westbrook come in and just give that kick of energy. Granted, it's not always going to look great, but I think Westbrook has enough of an IQ to be able to play off of a guy like Jokic. He's going to have to fit into the system because that's what the system is, and it ain't changing. I really like the Saric pickup as well. I think he had a really solid year for the Warriors last season as a backup big, sometimes even the starter. He can shoot the ball pretty well. He can handle it at times. Kind of reminds me of a bigger Kyle Anderson in that way.
Yeah.
Where it's he can he's a little Swiss Army knife offensively. Not a great defender, but he is going to compete. He's going to play some solid minutes, especially since Holmes is going to miss the season. I like Trey Alexander a lot as an undrafted signing. He's got a ton of potential, especially with a team that needs guards to kind of come up and emerge themselves in the league. I do worry, you're right, Rich, they are kind of moving in the wrong direction. They're a little bit limited with what kind of assets they can use to improve the team going forward. You could see them kind of turning into the Bucks of the West, where it's they have this strong core. They don't have a lot to go around it. But they do have the benefit of being considerably younger than the Bucks. So they have some time that they can make up some assets. If they need to tank for a year, that is a possibility for them down the line. But two, they've got some young players still in the system that I think we could see more out of. Peyton Watson fell out of the rotation in the playoffs. He's still got a ton of potential, even as a rim protector. I still have high hopes for Hunter Tyson.
Yeah.
And I'm forgetting Gonzaga guard,
Julian Strother.
Julian Strother. You're right. Julian Strother. Just to add another name, he had a great summer league, was shooting the ball really well, played a lot more point guard in summer league. So they got guys in-house. I'm not worried about this offseason, but I think a C is like as high as you could possibly grade this. And like that's like if you're really ambitious about Westbrook's fit.
Couple of points before I asked Drew his thoughts. Their other two-way guy is another person we had on the show, Spencer Jones from Stanford. The other point that I was thinking while you were talking was, I look at this and it's just like they need some of these young guys to step up, whether it's Zeke Naji or Peyton Watson or Hunter Tyson or Strother. Christian Braun is being expected. By the way, that's the mixture. When you go to say Braun, which is the way his name is spelt, and then you remember, oh, it's Brown, it becomes Brown. But anyway, he is definitely being asked to step up. But, I'm not so sure that I don't know if he's an NBA starter, So, Drew, I'm going to pass it over to you to see what your thoughts are on the Nuggets.
Yeah, I think Cam and I had the same grade. We both are at a C minus, and I could totally see where like if you squint hard, you can probably get yourself to a C. Like in if it works to its peak, if this offseason works to its peak, you're like, yeah, I could see it getting to a C. As somebody who watched a lot of Sarge last year because we were with the Warriors, I do think he's a great fit because again, I really think that Kyle Anderson's an apt like analysis of him. Like he's the type of guy that would fit perfectly with a Jokic. They play kind of a smart brand of basketball. He can play at all three levels as a scorer, and he's not terrible on defense. Like he does compete. Russell Westbrook is just such a wild card. Like I really liked the Bruce Brown point that Cam made. Like you kind of need a little bit of chaos. Every team needs like that one kind of agent of chaos, like that kind of just kind of muck it up guy, and it kind of makes a team go. And we know Westbrook can do that. The question is, can he do it in a positive way consistently? And like, what's it going to look like? Jokic is the offense, and can he adapt to like playing not only with the ball out of his hands? We had those questions with like the Lakers when he was with LeBron, but now it's like through a post player. So we'll see. I thought Holmes was a step in the right direction in terms of, hey, maybe getting some rim protection and some more athleticism there.
Yeah.
Again, obviously, we're not holding that against them, but like he's not going to be there for them. And in the future, Achilles tears are obviously kind of, I won't say the kiss of death, but are always like the scariest injury. So if that part of his game is impacted, that also hurts the value he'll provide in the future. I really like Alexander. I graded him as one of my favorite summer league players when we did our summer league show. I mean, there's an argument. I'd have to look at the list, but he might be my favorite like undrafted guy that was picked up, and I can see him stepping into a role a lot sooner than people are probably expecting. But yeah, I think it's a C minus. Like we're grading them on the curve of we expect them to compete for a championship as well, and so I think there is an element of like, so these moves really get them back into that tier with the Timberwolves and OKC. No, but I think Jokic is good enough to make pieces around him better. And I think that these guys are all up to the task. It's just a matter of how much better does he make them this year.
One more point. There's been talk that Jamal Murray something's wrong with him. The way he played this summer. Now, it was a pretty small sample, but people are saying, throw in, a lackluster playoffs plus, these Olympics. Jamal Murray's had his share of injury issues. People are talking, and to your point about Westbrook, he can push the ball, even though, he's still probably one of the fastest players in the league. I had never seen somebody as fast as Allen Iverson until Russell Westbrook came around. Now there's been a couple more since then, De'Aaron Fox and Ja Morant. But yeah, he's just one of those types of guards that can really help you push the ball. All right, so next up is Golden State Warriors, and they were pretty busy this offseason. Buddy Hield was part of the Klay Thompson deal. There was a sign and trade that the Sixers sent to the Warriors. Kyle Anderson was involved in the Klay Thompson deal, and he was that. I don't know if that was a sign and trade or just but yeah, the T-Wolves acquired some picks in that deal, including some second rounders and cash from the Warriors. Then they also got another Philadelphia player, DeAnthony Melton, from the Sixers. And Lindy Waters was part of a draft deal, and he's on a non-guaranteed contract, so he might not be there for the start of the season. They also acquired in the draft Quentin Post, who remains unsigned, and that pick, I believe, was traded 3 times. The Warriors, I think, initially had it, and then they traded it, and it was traded again, and then finally it was traded back to the Warriors. And they also signed one guy that we thought had a good chance to be drafted, was guard Reese Beekman out of Virginia. He's a defensive specialist, but also can pass, and shooting is the main concern with Beekman. But he's a very heady guard, solid athlete. So the guys they lost, Klay Thompson, Chris Paul was cut. Saric, who we just talked about going to Denver, Corey Joseph went to Orlando, and Usman Garuba also is apparently going to sign with Real Madrid, but that he's still technically a free agent. So the grades here ranged from a D from Cam to a C from Caleb. So Drew, I know the Warriors are near and dear to your heart. So what are your thoughts on what the Warriors have done and where they stand?
Yeah, I've kind of fluctuated between D plus and C minus. Not that that's a huge jump. And I ended up going with C minus. Maybe there's some rose tinted, Golden State tinted glasses on. I mean, if you talk about what they brought in, I really do think Buddy Hield, Anderson, and Melton in particular, those 3 are guys that serve a purpose. They play a role. They are proven NBA guys. They kind of fit that classic Warriors mold of those kind of like second unit role player guys who are all, veterans, maybe have been in the conversation, are they over the hill or not, but they still bring kind of a solid IQ to the game. I mean, Melton, we spoke highly of him when Philadelphia picked him up. Was it a year ago in the last offseason? There are concerns about his back.
2 years ago, I think.
2 years ago.
Yeah, he was
back issues are always concerning because they linger, and they can.
Tell me
you
about
never know. Yeah, you never know when they flare up. So there's a bit of a risk there. Anderson's probably my favorite pickup, just for again the versatility he brings as either perimeter player, kind of a small ball, high IQ 4, which the Warriors have always leaned on heavily. Buddy Hield, I think shooting wise, replaces Klay Thompson somewhat seamlessly. It's not as big of a drop-off as I think some people think. Obviously, Buddy's not a defender by any stretch, but Klay really wasn't either. The reality is, though, like, Quentin Post is not a needle mover for me. I mean, 52nd pick. They haven't even signed him. I don't think any draft picks should ever be viewed as a throwaway, but for a team like this, I think it's a bit more like, hey, they kind of liked what they saw. They picked him up and are still like kind of weighing options with him. I really like the Beekman pickup. I think he's definitely a guy that should have been on draft radars. Totally deserves a shot in the league. Played well in his limited summer league minutes. I saw him play live when they were doing the California Classic. He looked really sharp. And what they lost, I mean, again, Klay Thompson, I think it's more of a sentimental kind of heart pain that you feel there because of just so many memories and so many big moments. Chris Paul, definitely, again, kind of over the hill with injuries. I thought it could maybe work and stretch as it did, but again, he couldn't stay on the court. And then Sarge, Joseph, and Garuba are kind of like, those are guys that you kind of, that's just kind of their time in the NBA as they do 1 year stints in places and then, bounce around to somewhere else. But I mean, it boils down to a C minus because this is a team that needed a big fish. I know Larry Markkinen was on talks, but they needed a Larry Markkinen. They needed a Brandon Ingram. They needed some sort of kind of bigger, flashier move to really push this team to where it wants to go, because Hield, Anderson, and Melton don't move the needle aggressively in one way or the other. They're probably still at best, they're the last non-play-in team probably right now. Most likely a play-in team that will fight for a spot. I still think there's time for them to make a move. I know that they're very high on their young guys. I mean, I'm hearing reports that they think Podziemski's the guard of the future. That worries me a little bit because I love what he brings to the table, but every time I see him, I just can't stop thinking that there's no way this guy. We had Klay Thompson, we had Steph Curry as our guards, and now you saw those guys for the entirety of their prime. Steph is still in his, and you're watching Brandon Podziemski and think he's the next one of those guys. I don't really know where that evaluation process comes from. That's a little worrisome. So I think a C- is as high as you can go. And it's mostly because these three pickups, I do think help. I think they are better than they were last year, especially if Steph stays healthy and continues to play at a high level. If the young guys, Kuminga and them, take another kind of step forward, I think they are better than last year. But when you spend all offseason talking about how Lauri Markkanen or bust, or you're talking, we're going to get Brandon Ingram, they were in contention for like Zach LaVine, apparently at a super discounted rate, which I think would have been. I was hearing Zach LaVine and a first round pick for like a second round pick in Wiggins, and I was like, I would pull the trigger in a heartbeat just to try to get some new, like interject some new life, try something new.
Right.
If they want to sit pat, I get it. I just feel that whenever you have an all-timer still playing at a high level, you got to push the chips in. They didn't do that. Maybe, they're right and the young guys develop. I think these pieces help, but you cannot go any higher than a C. I think the C is an absolute cap, and I can totally see. I saw some D pluses. Cam had a D. I am not at all saying those are bad grades. I totally get it, because if Melton is injured and is 100%, if Buddy's shot isn't really falling, it wasn't really falling in Philadelphia. If he's still more of like a mid-tier 30s shooter, then that's not really doing you anything. And Anderson, we call him slow-mo for a reason. If he starts to really lose a step, then he kind of becomes a liability. So if this works to its perfection, it's a C. If it doesn't, it can get kind of ugly in the Bay.
Right. One thing I would add before I get Cam's comments is, you look at this depth chart, and the depth is solid, I think. And, solid to good, but the thing that worries me is it just looks like Steph is just going to have to carry so much, because Wiggins hasn't regained the form that he had the last year they won the title. And so he's going to really have to step it up. And even if he does, you still need, I think, either Kuminga or Moody or Podziemski to bring their game up to, like at least the level of like an Austin Reeves or something like that, a really good, reliable contributor. So Cam, what are your thoughts on the Warriors?
Man, I went with a D here because I think defensively this team is, like bottom 10.
Yeah.
Draymond Green team has always been solid statistically. Really good to solid defensively, but there's just no size anymore. I know Klay Thompson lost a step defensively, but he's still considerably, higher IQ than the average wing defender. I think replacing him with Buddy Hield, I like Buddy a lot. I love what he can bring offensively. But there's a reason that Philly wasn't really all that interested in re-signing him.
Or didn't even bother to play him in the playoffs.
Yeah, he was completely out of the rotation, which I think was a mistake. I think he can contribute enough offensively to really stay on the court. But love Kyle Anderson, love the things that he can do. I like the fit theoretically with the Warriors and the play style. I don't think that they can really put on a real defensive showing if he's going to play major minutes, especially if, the closest thing to a center they have is Looney. And I think he lost a little bit of a step last season. So I don't know. To me, it's a D, because at this point, why not just ride into the sunset with Klay Thompson and Steph Curry? The fans, maybe won't love it, but they're giving up assets even to bring in the guys that they brought in. And I don't think they're in a much better place, if at all. If I think honestly they might be in a worse place
Yeah,
than they
I
were
mean,
last.
really, I think they had to move one of the young guys. And if it was me, I'd move Kuminga if somebody liked him,
Yeah,
and and bring in a front court player.
yeah, I
And
totally
I know
agree.
they wanted to do that. They wanted to do that with Markkanen. But once Markkanen signed with Utah, he's not tradable till next year now.
Yep.
So yeah.
Yeah,
All
I
right.
mean, yeah, it's a mess.
Yeah.
Good luck to them.
Brandon Pajemski, all what is it? All NBA, season loading. I guess that's what we're banking on, and that's a terrifying thought, man. That is,
Yeah.
he's a great kind of like piece. You love him as like your kind of like if he's like your Sean Livingston, you're happy. But man, like Cam said, at this point, like how I don't know how you watch Steph Curry and Clay in their prime for a decade together and all the damage they did, and then think that this guy's got next after an okay rookie. He was okay as a rookie. Like I don't know, man. I'm not really looking forward to next season if I'm being completely honest. Hopefully the young guys surprise me. Like we don't play Moody, which I think is kind of a mistake, and I can't fully wrap my arms around Kuminga. I just haven't been able to do it since he's been there, and maybe he proves maybe this is the year, but he's up for like a $230 million potential extension,
Oh.
and that is
Oh.
frightening.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like that is
I was thinking the same
absolutely
thing, Drew.
frightening.
Yeah, I was thinking the same thing. It's just like I still can't evaluate Kuminga. It's like I'm at the point now where it feels like the classic good stats bad team guy. He almost feels to me like a propped up rookie. You know what I mean?
For
Like,
sure.
we spend a lot of assets on this guy. We got to get him minutes. We gotta feed him the ball, see if he can do anything, and pray that he develops. But I still feel like he's wandering and lost most of the time.
You know who he reminds me of is Minnesota Andrew Wiggins. Is like he's still like we're like propping him up. It's like, but he was the first overall pick, and look, he averages 20 a game. But everyone's like, yeah, but there's so much untapped potential. Comes to the Warriors, taps into it for a year, and then falls back off the train. I'm literally feel like we have him in a position where he's only being talked about the way he's being talked about because he was supposed to be the promised one to be the carryover, and it's like every fourth game he'll go for 25 and look super efficient, but then I don't know. I'm hanging on to those rings, man. I'm wiping away my tears with championship banners at this point, so I guess it's not that bad.
All right, so we'll move on to the Rockets, who had a pretty quiet offseason. They did get AJ Griffin from Atlanta basically for free. They got Jock Landale signed as a free agent at center. They seemed to hit on their draft pick. They only had one, but at pick 3, they picked Reed Shepherd, and he looked outstanding in summer league. He's probably the most talked about rookie, around the league right now. Everyone's excited about that. The only problem is Houston has so much depth. Is like where's he gonna win? How much? Where can he play? The players they lost, no big deal. Reggie Bullock is still a free agent, and Boban Marjanovic is still a free agent. And that's it. So we pretty much liked Houston because we liked the direction they are going, and they added Shepherd and a couple other pieces that Landale, is going to be solid for you. And Griffin, who knows? He's never really had a real opportunity yet. So we gave them 2 A minuses and 2 A's. So we're really high on them. So Cam, what do you think of the Rockets?
I mean, that tells you a lot already. Like usually when a team is quiet, we don't score them in the A range. Like you're generally pretty lucky to be in a B. That shows you how much collectively we really like Reed Shepherd. I know, like in the draft process, I was not a huge fan. During college season, I wasn't a huge fan, but man, I mean, right out the gate, I mean, he clearly had the best summer league of any rookie, just far and away. Looked so poised, looked so ready for the moment, was shooting the ball well. I know like not like his crazy college percentages, but he was shooting it well, and handled the ball really, really, really well. I think much more prepared as a guard, as a lead guard, than I think maybe we even really evaluated him as. Big thing is, man, I mean, they got AJ Griffin for nothing.
Mm-hmm.
I really liked him, coming out of the draft a few years back. Um, Still confused why he wasn't a major part of the Atlanta rotation. I don't know. Maybe there's something going on in the Griffin family and the NBA is just out. I don't know.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, this team, they're building from within. They've got the draft assets to continue this process, and they had a really nice step in the right direction this offseason. And I don't know what else to say. Like they got a pair of interesting prospects, and they look really solid coming into next season.
You throw in the fact that Tari Eason barely played last season. He'll be coming back. Steven Adams was added, at the trade deadline. He'll be coming back. I mean, let's look at this team's second string for, that we're projecting on our depth charts. You ready for this? Amen Thompson, Reed Shepherd, Tari Eason, Cam Whitmore, and Steven Adams. That's their second string. I mean, ahead of them, Fred VanVleet, Jalen Green, Dylan Brooks, Jabari Smith, and Alperen Sengun. I mean, this team. So we didn't even mention Landale or Griffin or Jeff Green. They're third string. I mean, this team is just has the problem is going to be playing time. I think
quick, do we think that they're a playoff team? I know we're going to get into this
I do.
Closer to the I think they might be this year.
Oh yeah. I thought they were going to be last year. Actually, I think I had them in the play.
You and I were on that page. Yeah.
Right.
I think timeline wise it didn't work for them. Plus Sengun got hurt. So that kind of threw a wrench in everything too, but they were playing really well. And they played even better after he got hurt. I don't know. I think this year they could be really, really nice though.
Yeah. Drew, what are your thoughts on what the Rockets did?
I mean, yeah, I think when you get a guy like AJ Griffin for free and then you get Reed Shepherd, who looks like he might be the player of the draft. I mean, obviously it's super early, but like just the performance he put together, obviously we always say here we don't put too much stock in summer league, but I think we also all agree that playing guard, especially like a lead guard role, is the hardest transition to make because the game just moves so much faster. Everyone's so much bigger, more experienced, and for him to come in and not just score the ball. I mean, some of the passes this kid was making, like throwing these like no look pocket passes, 2 feet in the paint, hitting. I was like really impressed at that element of his game. So I think, boom, I gave them an A for that pick. So they start off strong there. They get a guy who's not that far removed from being a lottery pick and a highly sought after prospect for like nothing. Boom, that's an A+ move. And then you get Landale, who is just another depth piece. I mean, again, he's your third string center, but I mean, the Suns were giving him legitimate minutes on a team that had like championship aspirations, and now he's your third string center. So, all that being said, you lose nothing. You bring in, 3 guys who are probably going to factor in your rotation to some degree, and especially with 2 of those guys being like young, kind of potential cornerstone guys. I don't think that you can't not give them an A. And yeah, you just look at their depth chart, and when you go legitimately 2 to 3 deep at every position in the NBA, that's a huge plus, especially in the West where it's competitive. And, there's teams like the Warriors we talk about, they're 1 injury away from being potentially the worst team in the league. Steph Curry goes down, they are horrendous. This Rockets team, they could lose VanVleet and Thompson and go, all right, Reed, I guess you're the starting point guard. And from what we saw in Summer League, you're like, okay, it's not great, but hey, he might be able to hold down the fort for like a week or 2. That's a huge plus. So, yeah, I think you have to give them an A. You guys hit the nail on the head. It will be interesting to see what they do with playing time. Like, there are so many young, guys that we still consider so young on this team. Like, I can't imagine that, maybe it's not this year, but I could see within the next year, there's some guys are on the move and maybe they try to make kind of an all-in push and start moving some assets to go try to get like a really high-level star and pair their top 3 young guys around one of those, like a really established star, kind of all like OKC Shea, and they're, have made some moves. So we'll see. But this team, I think, is going to be really fun because they can play basketball in so many different ways with the line of variation. They can go big, they can go small. They have super talented guards. They've got like a really fun big and kind of like a Jokic light in Sengun. Like, they're going to be good, man.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, so we're going to move on to the Clippers, what they did this offseason kind of smells like what Golden State did, if you ask me. So they bring in Derek Jones, free agent from Dallas, Nick Batum, free agent from the Sixers. Chris Dunn was acquired in a sign and trade that involved Russell Westbrook. They signed Kevin Porter Jr., who I have no idea where he was last year. I don't really care. I don't know why he's back in the NBA, but okay. And they brought in Mohamed Bamba from the Sixers. So in the draft, they had only one pick, and they signed Cam Christie, who is Doug, or not Doug Christie. What's the kid for the Lakers? Max Christie?
Max Christie.
Yeah, this is his younger brother. This kid can really shoot. I think he's better than Max. He's a good shot creator. He has nice size for a guard. So that was a nice pick. They also brought in as a free agent rookie and put him on a two-way contract, Trenton Flowers, who was highly regarded. I assume many people thought he might be a first-round pick before last season. He was supposed to play at, help me out here, what college did he leave at the last minute? I don't. Anyway,
Don't remember off the top of my head.
He had committed to somebody, and he was there, and he left to play in Australia. He was terrible in Australia, but still, this kid is big. He's like 6'7", 6'8", has point guard skills. So he was a nice two-way contract signing. Now, who they lost? Paul George to Philadelphia. Basically for, they just didn't sign him. Russell Westbrook. We talked about him a lot already. Daniel Tice went to New Orleans as a free agent. Mason Plumlee, who's one of my favorite. I like Tice and Plumlee. They're two of my favorite players. And Plumlee went to Phoenix. So the Clippers basically lost Paul George and Russell Westbrook, and I'd say the best thing they brought in was Derek Jones. So we'll start. I don't know where we left off. Drew, I'll give you first crack at this. Our grades ranged again from a C to a D. So what are you thinking?
Yeah, I was on the D train here. I mean, like, I don't think any of the guys that they brought in, Kevin Porter notwithstanding, I'm not really, for a lot of reasons, I'm just kind of done with him.
Yeah.
But like, Derek Jones, Chris Dunn, Muhammad, like pieces, right? Like, okay, they're solid pieces. I think Batum's slowly but surely, like, he's still pretty efficient, still gives you some rebounding, but like he's not the Batum he was in Portland or those early years in Charlotte where he was kind of a really solid Swiss Army knife that was almost kind of like a Paul George light in that sense, like could defend, score a little bit, rebound, pass. Like none of these guys really do it for me, a la the Golden State Warriors. And I think it just hurts that much more that you lost Paul George. Like we'll see with Paul George, right? Like he's got a lot to prove in this kind of last hurrah probably for him. But like I'm still taking Paul George over all of these guys. Like obviously no questions asked. And so it's like I'm also maybe projecting some of the like, okay, we know, or I'm pretty confident that Kawhi is not going to suddenly go play 82 games. And so I just can't really imagine this team trotting out a lineup that really strikes fear in anybody, especially in the West. I think all of these moves are kind of Band-Aid moves. Like Dunn can, soak up some minutes as a guard, and he doesn't really turn the ball over. He competes he's a good defender, can play make, but not a massive needle mover, more of like a second string guy. We saw Derek Jones have kind of a really nice emergence, or have a good season with, I guess, Dallas, but again, he got to play to a role where he was he didn't have to worry about being the dude at all. Like he had two alphas kind of running the show, and he just was a piece. Again, we'll see how he steps into a role where they're probably going to ask a little bit more of him. I think Batum's just getting up there in age, and Bamba's kind of just a backup center, like we know what he kind of is. I personally am just at the point where, like, if he's your backup, I'm feeling cool, but again, I don't know how much he's going to have to absorb with this team, so it's really underwhelming. And I guess I'm projecting the fact that I just think this team got worse, made some slight, like they put Band-Aids on some, like a shotgun wound, and they're like, hey, this trotting it out. And, if Kawhi gives us 70 games, maybe we're competitive. If he gives us 60, we're probably not very good. and I think that's a D offseason.
You know, you take Kawhi out of this equation. You know, let's say he plays 30 games.
Oh yeah,
This may be one of the worst teams in the league. They still look old.
Exactly.
Despite all the turnover, they still look old. You know,
For
their
sure.
depth chart.
For sure.
And what are they going to? You're going to run with James Harden and Kawhi Leonard? And where do you think you're going with that?
Yeah. So I
The
get it.
strip
Like,
club.
Huh?
yeah.
They're going to the strip club, dude.
with Uncle Dennis. I just I'm like, to be completely honest, I don't think there was anything that there's not a lot they probably could have done this offseason to have like a really big, I mean, Paul George seemed like he wanted to leave, and, you know, he was trying to get to the Warriors, and once that kind of fell through because the Clippers, to be honest, I think that could have been a saving move, is apparently the Warriors were pretty ready to offer a pretty big package for Paul George, and I honestly have heard, like, from out of spite, they turned it down, like recuperate something for him for all they gave up might have helped this grade a little bit. Instead, he just walks away. So yeah, I just don't know. You're still old. You're still tied to two guys that on any given point in this season could miss a big chunk of time.
Or both could disappear in the playoffs. They both disappeared in the playoffs for different reasons. You know, Leonard usually ends up not being able to play, and Harden just disappears because he's James Harden.
Yeah. So it was a D. Maybe these guys, you know, maybe Derek Jones has another leap in him and he turns into, like, you know, a second tier kind of alpha guy. Maybe Batum winds the clock back and has a big resurgence, but I don't really see it.
I'm changing my grade to D- just talking about it. Kim?
Yeah, man, Rich, I'm sitting here like, why the hell did I give this a C ever in a billion years? Because I gotta be like, I think the reason I gave them a C is because I like the Band-Aids. But I shouldn't give them a C because they did well with the Band-Aids. They bungled the Paul George contract. I mean, in what world are you giving Kawhi an extension before Paul George? Why? And then spending the money then on Harden in the same offseason as Paul George. It makes no sense, right? Yeah, sorry. Got hyped up there for a second. I gotta be honest though, I do like the Band-Aids. I think Chris Dunn, to me, is the biggest signing. I love, like, that there's like that one meme going around of, like, you know, so-and-so is like the Michael Jordan of what's it good, like the Michael Jordan of Shane Battier's. You know what I mean? Where it's like a role player, but they're really good at that role, like the sweetest cream of the crop of that role. Chris Dunn to me is like he's like the Michael Jordan of the Reggie Jacksons. I like, he's not great. He's a really, really.
I believe he was the 5th overall pick when he was drafted, by the way.
He was, yeah, he was. And I still think that the Wolves gave up on him a little too soon. I mean, he made his way back into the league, and he really quietly had a great season in Utah. He got buried on their chart because they were trying to lose games, but I think that's a really nice pickup for them, especially a team that needs guard play. Of course, they don't need it as much now that James Harden's running the show.
They need guards that can defend, though.
Yeah, they need somebody that can defend. That'd be nice. At the end of the day, though, man, I think, you know, with the new CBA, the era of the 3-star players is like right on the edge of being over.
Oh yeah.
And I think part of why I gave them the C as well is, like, long term, even if they had found a way to shell out the money, they were going to sacrifice any depth and any and all future flexibility to keep that team together, and they still haven't done anything. So I think, you know, they are Band-Aids, but it's a soft reboot that has to happen for this Clippers team, especially going into, you know, a huge investment from Ballmer with their new stadium, and they're trying to build something there. I think, you know, it's hard for them because they're still grasping at the straws of, like, you know, feeling like they had the championship won when they signed Kawhi and Paul George, you know, all those years ago now. And, you know,
I think it was only 2 years ago that I picked them to win the NBA title.
Yeah, I mean, they always had the potential. It just never came together. It's just, you know, I think in the way that, like, it sucks that they can't fully commit to it any longer. it would be a mistake for them to completely give up on it, because there was a time where Kawhi Leonard was, really the favorite to become MVP of the league. I mean, two Finals MVPs in a row. So, the potential's still there. But man, it's still just like it's a razor thin margin of what this team can be. Especially when you start thinking about the playoffs and injuries and James Harden disappearing. And, I think they're still probably a playoff team in my mind. I think they always find a way to just weasel their way in there, if not the play-in. But, I don't think they're a championship contender anymore. And I think they still had a shot at it last year. But yeah, really tough offseason for the two Clippers fans out there.
All right, so we'll move on to the other Los Angeles team, the Lakers, and they really didn't do much. And as Cam noted, usually when a team doesn't do a lot, we don't give them a great grade. Our grades ranged from C to B minus. I'd say the collective would have been a C plus. Here's what happened. They basically didn't add any new free agents of significance. The rookies is where they scored, especially with Dalton Connect at pick 17. I still don't know how he fell that far. That was for a contending team. There was multiple contending teams that passed him over for projects, and I don't quite understand that. They also used their second round pick 55 on Bronny James, of course. And the two players they lost that were significant was Taurean Prince to Milwaukee, Spencer Dinwiddie to Dallas. I'll stay with you, Cam. What do you think of the Lakers?
Honestly, if they had just traded away pick 55, I might have gone with an A. I just think, dude, Dalton Connect is my guy. You guys know that. I'm a Tennessee fan. I loved him in the draft. I think he probably should have gone well within the top 10. I mean, they got another Austin Reeves, basically, except he's probably a better scorer. Maybe a little bit
better
worse
all around scorer for sure. Better athlete, probably.
Yep. He's just a great pickup for them. And they didn't lose a whole lot. I mean, I know they gave up a little bit to get Dinwiddie late in the season, but nothing major. Taurean Prince is a nice depth piece depending on the roster construction. I think he really helped them as a shooter, and they're probably already getting a better shooter and Connect added to the team.
Most definitely.
I think Connect alone just fits so well with what they need. And like I joke about Bronny James, but he still has the athletic pedigree. I don't know if he knows all that much of how to play. The reality is he doesn't have to right now. If he's a rotation player within the next 2 years, they're happy ultimately.
Yeah.
To me, a really solid offseason for the Lakers. A little stability and building on what they do have.
Mm-hmm. Drew, any other thoughts?
Yeah, I'm the one who gave the C, and maybe there's some Laker hate coming here, and maybe it's like I'm stepping back, kind of be like, perhaps I treated you too harshly, because I think we all were in agreement. Like I think I gave them like an A minus for just Dalton Connect alone. I don't get why teams passed on him. I don't get why they let the Lakers, the one team that like really needed him, especially looking back that they haven't signed anybody, like they really, really needed him and they got him. They didn't have to move up, didn't have to do anything crazy. So I'm at a C. Hearing Cam, I can definitely be in that C plus range and maybe even the B minus range. Mostly it's just like for a team that still has Anthony Davis and LeBron James and they're still viewing themselves, I would assume, as contenders. I don't think they've done enough to support the team as a whole. Like as good as I think Dalton is going to be, and I totally think that he is going to be like an Austin Reeves on steroids type, like upside, like that same type of player who can probably get into like that 18 to 20 points per game. Just he's a freaking scorer. He's still going to be a rookie. There's still going to be growing pains that come with that. And like if you think you're still have enough to maybe try to make a run at it, banking on a rookie being the missing piece is still tough for me. So that's kind of why I was more in the C range. but I do love the pick. Again, the Bronny thing, I know there's a lot of discourse around it. It's kind of a whatever pick for me. He's clearly not going to be like playing major minutes for them. It's not like they drafted him and handed him the starting point guard role. They drafted him, keep LeBron happy. He's gonna, be in the G League for probably a year, maybe even 2, while he figures it out. They didn't lose anything major, and then Dalton fixes the stuff they did lose. Dalton kind of automatically kind of replenishes that with the upside of him being, he is a rookie. So I could definitely, I'm mad to see, mostly just because it's like they just didn't do enough to justify the discussions people are going to have about them contending. Like, you had the healthiest Anthony Davis has probably ever been, and that wasn't enough. And LeBron continues to defy time, and that wasn't enough. So it's like all you're doing is adding another year on those guys' bodies, a Summer Olympics on those guys' bodies, and the only reinforcements you're giving them is a rookie. Even though it's a rookie I love, it's still a rookie. So I'm at a C. But C+, even a B-, like if you're that high on Dalton and think he's ready to come in right away and be like a Jaime Jaquez level contributor, like off the rip, then I can totally understand that train of thought.
All right, so we'll move on to Memphis. And the only veteran that they have was originally part of the Mikal Bridges trade, and that's Mabadai Diakite. He was basically, they did a little salary dump and sent Zaire Williams packing and got Diakite in return. He may not even make the final roster. The big thing for Memphis was their draft. And I think how you view this team comes down to one player, but their draft was Zach Edey at pick 9, Jalen Wells at pick 39, and Cam Spencer at pick 53. Spencer's going to be on a 2-way contract, so he's kind of out of the equation for this year. Wells, who's a nice shooting wing, scoring wing, and Edey are expected to be pretty involved. Who they lost was, of course, as I said, Zaire Williams went to Brooklyn. Lamar Stevens, who really wasn't a big deal for them, is still a free agent. And Jordan Goodwin, also still a free agent. They had to use a ton of players last year because they just had unbelievable amount of injuries. So, yeah, and Jordan Stevens were part of some of the players that they had to pick up. So our grades range from C to B. And Caleb said he loved the value and fit of the rookies, and they didn't lose anyone important. Yeah, that's true. Again, to me, it comes down to Edey, who the people are projecting is going to be the rookie of the year. Most people, if Zach Edey is playing that many minutes to be rookie of the year, my question is, what do you do with some of the other young pieces, like Sante Aldama, who to me is at worst, a top bench player, and then you have Gigi Jackson, who's looking like a future starter. So, and then you have Brandon Clark, who really, came back in the middle of the season last year. So Brandon Clark still has upside as a defender. So where those guys are going to lose playing time if Zach Edey's there, because that means Jaren Jackson is moving up back to forward. Yeah. So I have mixed feelings about this, and I'll start off with you, Cam.
Man, I gotta be real. Like, I love the draft. I know, Rich, you and I, when we were working on the mock, we debated, are they going to take Edey?
Right.
And we knew it was going to be a gamble if they did it. And I loved it. I think he's a perfect fit, like Caleb said. I also love the value in Jalen Wells, one of the guys that I was really high on in this draft. They got him at pick 39. He was a first rounder on my personal board. Love Jalen Wells. Love everything that he can do offensively. And then Cam Spencer. I mean, a great depth piece. I'm sure he's going to be on that 2-way deal. He might not spend a whole lot of time up with the Grizzlies this year. But, they had a lot of injuries last year, a historic amount of injuries last year. So who knows? Maybe he will spend time, quite a bit of time up with the Grizzlies. I think the big reason I went with a B- is I think there's some question marks with their overall roster construction that they could really have looked to have cleared up, before the season. I still kind of question where Marcus Smart fits with this team, what kind of minutes he should be playing, what his role really is. Obviously, it's a question mark. What are you getting out of John Morant this year, coming off of injury? Hasn't essentially played in a year and a half.
And Smart didn't play. Smart missed a lot of time last year too.
They all missed a lot of time.
Yeah,
Desmond missed half the season.
Yeah.
Yep. I just like the core of this team has the potential to be. I mean, they have the potential to be the number one team in the West. They really do. They've done it before,
I don't see that.
They have it. They proved it. I mean, they nearly beat the Warriors.
That's true.
In that championship run. So
Steven Adams though was a pretty big piece of that.
He is a big piece of that. Yep, he was. And that's the thing, right? They've seen it before, but it was a different version of the team, right? I don't know. I think this year, for the Grizzlies, I think they just want to have some semblance of normalcy again
and get back in the playoffs.
Yeah, see if they can get back in playoffs, get back on that trajectory again. Maybe make some moves at the trade deadline. I guess that's what they're probably aiming for. Wouldn't be shocked if this was like a Lowry Markkanen type team. Maybe if they could, find a way to snag him after his contract becomes movable. I don't know. I think, I like the rookies enough. And I like the roster in place enough. I think they have some more moves to make. And that's why I couldn't push it up to like a B or an A.
Yeah. To me, Aldama is going to probably end up being wasted. Or GG Jackson. That's the one thing that worries me. In the meantime, you have Marcus Smart as your starting shooting guard, or you go with Kennard, but they'll probably go with Smart. And you don't have much behind Morant, Smart, and Kennard, So, yeah, I don't know. I think.
I will say Vince Williams had a great season last year.
He did. Yep, he filled in nicely. Drew, you have anything to add?
Nothing much. I gave him a C because I think that this is, out of all the teams in the NBA, I think this was the one team that had the most, they were most justified in kind of just standing pat, because they're like, we had an all NBA caliber guard basically not play for us. We had the reigning most improved player of the year who averaged 22 a game the year before and basically not play for us. Marcus Smart missed time. Clark was coming off in a kill. Like, they were just like, I think they could just stood pat. So they went with the rookie route. Zach Edey fills a need. Does he fill the need the right way? Like, that, we'll see. You know me, I'm on the other end of the Edey spectrum. I just have concerns about how he holds up in a defensive coverage where, he's still probably the biggest guy out there, but it's not the same advantage. And also the guards he's going to be asked to do on defense, the things he's going to be asked to do on defense are going to be different. And he's going to be going against guys that are going to know how to take advantage of him and exploit his weaknesses, just like he exploits people's weaknesses on the other end with his size and strength. So we'll see how that works. Steven Adams is a big part of that. And we'll see if Edey's ready to replace that right off the rip. But I gave him a C. Like, I don't think they did anything wrong. I do like their draft overall. I have no issue with Edey getting drafted. I just think 9's kind of high. Wells, shout out Sonoma State Seawolves, where I'm at now, I think has all the makings to find a way into the league sooner rather than later, especially with shooting being his. And I love Cam Spencer. Like, dude is a winner. Dude's a competitor. Like Cam said, I would not be shocked to see him somehow. There's going to be a game. Like, he totally strikes me as the type of guy that, like, they're going to be in a playoff game and all of a sudden, like, dude, Cam Spencer's out there and, he just stole the ball to secure a win. Like, it might only be 2 minutes of action.
They'd have to upgrade him to a standard contract, which they have room to do.
He's on a two-way.
Right.
But,
so, I have a feeling that either he or Pippen, the other two-way point guard, I have a feeling that one of those two are going to end up being upgraded to the regular season roster.
So, not much to add. They stood pat. I think they were completely justified in that thought process. Like, they're not that far removed from being a really dangerous team out west. They have every reason to believe that they're going to run it back with Edey in that starting lineup and should make some noise. So, I think a lot of people think C and they think that's a bad grade. Like, C is like average. Like, to me, a C is like an average offseason.
Right,
it's like nothing good, nothing bad. And when you bring in a guy as a free agent who you're probably not even going to keep, and Diakite, and then 3 rookies, and you didn't lose a lot. Like, okay, yeah, solid C.
All right. We'll move on to Minnesota, who was in that 3-way race for the top seed in the West with Denver and OKC. They, too, were one of those teams that had a lot of people already signed and wrapped up, so they weren't going to make a ton of moves. And though we love their draft, but in free agency, they added Joe Ingles, more probably as a, on the bench, a coach in uniform. And their draft, we thought, was stellar with Rob Dillingham, the combo guard at pick 8, and Terrence Shannon, the wing, who fell because of some legal troubles. They acquired Dillingham for a future first-round pick from the Spurs, plus a right to swap in 2030, and the pick they sent was 2031, so that's pretty far off down the road. Now they did lose a couple players. Well, actually, one player that was pretty much in the rotation. That's Kyle Anderson, which we talked about. He went to Golden State. Wendell Moore ended up in Detroit. Draft, it was a 4-team trade. Monte Morris, they didn't re-sign as a free agent, but he really didn't play in the playoffs. And Jordan McLaughlin, the other veteran point guard they had on the roster, he signed with Sacramento. He didn't really play in the playoffs. So, why are they doing that? Well, I think they think that Dillingham is the perfect long-term replacement for Mike Conley, and I think that's the plan. He's going to back up Mike Conley and eventually take over. So, Drew, what do you think of what the Timberwolves did? Oh, by the way, our grades range from B+ to A-. So we loved what they did, which wasn't much, but they're a good team already.
Yep, it was in the A- group, which it looks like most of us were. These are the types of moves that a team that has a really set rotation that was looking to contend. Again, these are kind of the moves on the margin you have to make. They saw some young guys that they liked and made a play for them, knowing that they'll be in a perfect situation to learn and grow. Probably still see some action. I mean, I'm looking at various depth charts, like Dillingham is listed as the backup behind Mike Conley. People I think kind of forget they still have Alexander Walker there excuse me, at that other guard position, who's another kind of steady hand. Terrence Shannon, Joe Ingles and Terrence Shannon will probably kind of go back and forth maybe for that second, like, small forward spot. Like, Ingles is, again, the perfect veteran to have, like, that coach on the floor, super savvy, still does all the small right things. I mean, his stat line doesn't jump out, but he was efficient last year, particularly from 3. He still competes in a crafty way on defense. He's kind of got that. He's a fire in the belly type of Australian guy. Like, he brings kind of an edge to him, which a team like this could always use as they're trying to learn how to compete in the playoffs. So I love the moves that they made. I think Terrence Shannon at 27 was a steal. I know that I'm sure the legal issues that ended up being resolved in his favor might have scared some people off, and he was
no doubt
killing it in summer league. He was awesome. So don't be surprised. Jaden McDaniels is going to be that starting small forward. I can see Joe Ingles for the first bit of the season maybe being that first guy to step in on the wing, but I could totally see Terrence Shannon finding his stride at that halfway point and then becoming the kind of second string wing. And if that's the case, you're looking at a second unit of Rob Dillingham, Alexander Walker, Shannon Jr., and then Naz Reid will kind of bounce between the forward or center, depending on which one of the two bigs is out. So
I think Ingles, too, is insurance behind Leonard Miller.
For sure.
If Leonard Miller starts to live up to the expectations, great. If not, we have Joe Ingles as insurance.
You can he played 17 minutes a game last year. If you toss him 15 minutes, maybe 15 to 20 max a night, you can still feel confident you'll get some solid stuff out of him, which is exactly what a contending team needs. So this was an easy A- for me.
Yep. Cam, you have anything to add?
I'm still shocked that they got Dillingham for as little as they did. I know he's a little bit tough to evaluate because he is really small. He's got the height, I would say, but he's skinny.
Yep.
And when the Spurs took him, I was ecstatic. I thought it was going to be a really exciting pairing, and then they traded him, and to see all they got was a future first and a swap. I was shocked. I really was. I think I just love the calculus of let's spend the few assets that we have and get some real high quality draft talent that we can hold on to for a few years, especially since they're going to run into a hell of a cap problem in the next year.
Yep.
It gives them a ton of flexibility. And if one of the guys, I think Shannon probably is ready right away, it's just the cherry on top. I mean, they're like Drew said, adding to the depth is a massive step in the right direction. And on top of that, you get the culture of having Grandpa Joe in the locker room. Love Joe Ingles. They're going to love him in Minnesota. He's going to be cussing to the fans every night. Man, this team, man, it's not how I would have built it, but I love it.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, I agree. That's exactly my feelings. All right, so we'll move on to New Orleans. There's a team that I had a tough time evaluating this team. I don't know if they're going in the right direction, and I'm not sure they know what direction they're going. But and that's the New Orleans Pelicans. They acquired DeJounte Murray for a whole host of things, players. Larry Nance Jr. Went to Atlanta. Dyson Daniels, E.J. Liddell, Cody Zeller. They also sent Lakers first-round pick next year or this coming year, and either the Pelicans or the Bucks first-round pick, whichever is most favorable in 2027. They also acquired Daniel Tice as a free agent, which I think was a nice pickup. The draft, I thought they made a real logical move, and with their first pick, Yves Missi, the excellent defending center out of Baylor at pick 21. I thought he was a little bit of a steal at 21. And, one thing this team really lacks is a shot blocker, and he will do that for you. The rest of their draft picks, or they only have one other draft pick. That was Antonio Reeves from Kentucky. It's not surprising to me that he went in the second round, though I thought he might not get drafted. Good offensive player. And then they also brought over Carlo Matrakovic. He was a drafted stash from 2022. He was pick 52 that year. So, and Reeves was pick 47 this year. I mentioned they lost Daniels, they lost Nance. They also didn't sign Valanciunas. He was sent in sign and trade to the Wizards for not much. Looks like Jesus. Is that right? He was sent to Washington for a 2027 second round pick that's top 50 protected. Okay, so they just basically let Valanciunas sign with the Wizards further. And they lost the aforementioned Najee Marshall to Dallas. Zeller and E.J. Liddell, as I said, were a part of the Murray trade. So grade-wise, once again, we were all really grouped closely together. 2 B minuses, 2 C plus. Who was the last person to talk? Cam, you were. So, Cam, what do you think about New Orleans? When you look at their depth chart, you're like, not sure how it's all gonna. And I guess we all thought Brandon Ingram was going to be gone. I think that's the holdup. I don't think they want Brandon Ingram, but unfortunately, no one else does either. And so yeah, I mean, he's a nice scorer, but it just seems to disappear at the wrong moments. Say the same about their piece that they're trying to build around with Zion. So yeah, I'm not really, when you look at this depth chart, you could manipulate it all different ways. There's a lot of combinations they could go, but I don't know if I like any of them really.
I don't know, Rich. I think I was definitely in that spot last season with them. I knew that they were going to be better than people thought, but at the same time, they were capped pretty heavily, especially in the playoffs. I have mixed feelings about Brandon Ingram. In some ways, like I think he fits better without Zion, and I think the same works in reverse. They had that really nice playoff run, when Zion was hurt, a couple seasons back, and Ingram looked awesome. He looked like the budget Kevin Durant that people thought he could be.
Right.
So I have my doubts about moving on from him, at least right now, especially given that they moved Dyson Daniels in this trade for DeJounte Murray. I think he's kind of one of the guys that you would have slotted in behind him to kind of move in to replace him. But I really like the DeJounte Murray fit with this team. I hated his fit with the Hawks. Despised it. DeJounte really needs the ball offensively to really influence the game. He's a nice pick and roll player, not incredible. But I think too, like, he can benefit from sharing the ball a little bit more. I think the issue in Atlanta was, when he was off ball, there wasn't a lot of movement. It was kind of the take turns style of play between him and Trae Young. I think the Pelicans have a really nice culture of sharing the ball, and they'll adjust to the personnel on the court. They've done that with Valanciunas for years, just really, really fitting in with the personnel. And then Tice fits so much better than Valanciunas did. Love Valanciunas as a player. He really had no business on this Pelicans team. They need somebody that can occasionally space the court, somebody that's going to work as a rim runner, and Valanciunas did neither of those things. Tice can do both of those things. So I really like that fit. I like what they did in the draft. Antonio Reeves, whatever, he's not much to me. Love Yves Missi, like you were saying, Rich. I think he could be a huge steal. I think Jalen Duren is probably a better prospect, but I think they're similar players.
Yeah.
And I think, right now you could argue Duren's probably maybe the best prospect on the Pistons, depending how you evaluate him.
Yeah.
So I think they've got some upside there with Missi. I wouldn't be shocked if he really cracked the rotation really, honestly, pretty early this season. He could easily be the Lively of this draft. I don't know how ready he is offensively, but I got to say, I think I like his offense more than I liked Lively's in college. Depending how things fall, I could have probably gone higher with this grade. I could have gone into the, maybe A-, B+ range. But I do think they moved a lot of guys out. And I think that's always a hard adjustment, especially when you got, great defender like Dyson Daniels and a guy like Nance that was such a big part of the way that they played, especially in playoffs. But man, I think they're moving in the right direction. I had to give them a B- for that.
Yeah. I'm just not so sure where, you just, I guess if it all fits, I guess my question is, do you bring Brandon Ingram off the bench or do you, no, you start him? So then he's going to be your.
You have to. Yeah, you have to start him.
So then that means McCollum probably moves to the bench. But that's probably not a bad thing. He's got a lot of wear and tear on him, and he's getting up there. So also we're waiting for Jordan Hawkins to come alive at some point. Drew, have anything to add about this somewhat confusing collection of players? At least to me.
I mean, Cam and I were the B- in the group pretty much for all the same reasons. I think on paper, the quick glance is you lose Valanciunas, you're losing a double-double guy who at one point did average 20 in the league, and you're like, you're replacing with a rookie and Daniel Tice. But when you look at the fit, you're like, okay, that actually kind of makes more sense for what this team was trying to do. They weren't trying to dump the ball down and play through the post. And so, like, what is Valanciunas doing there? Like, it doesn't work. I'm bummed that they lose Larry Nance and Dyson Daniels. They were I'm a big Dyson Daniels guy, so seeing him, be shipped out and Brandon Ingram stay, I think for me personally kind of stings. And Larry Nance, like, again, the stat sheet doesn't jump off the page, but he just did so many things for that team that, they just would they've got from the bench that teams are looking for from their kind of reserve first big off the bench. I think Murray is finally in a place where he can, kind of be the dude on offense. This team has needed a point guard, in my opinion. Like, there were times they were trying out McCollum at point, and it's not his position. He is a 2 through and through. So I like that pickup. And yeah, I mean, I think it's just a matter of what do they do with the roster they have. I think Ingram's that last domino to fall. If they want to just kind of NBA 2K and roll out the best to keep the most possible talent, they'll probably just keep him. But if they're trying to go for fit, I mean, I love Herb Jones. I think Trey Murphy's come a long way. He's exceeded expectations I had for him. Like, I think those two guys are both ready to step into a starting role on the wing if they need to. And, Murphy's shooting ability could fit alongside the guys. And then Herb Jones just being a Swiss Army knife. I think you plug him in and you're like, doesn't need the ball, will defend, can play a little point forward. So we'll see what they do, but B- for sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll say too, you heard it here first. You're going to see a ton of Zion Williams at the center this year.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And
That's a
I
good,
expected
good
that.
call.
I expected that a lot already.
That's a call.
And
Good
we'll
call.
see that more. All right. So Oklahoma City's up next, and we had probably the most widest opinion on what this team's off season. They acquired Alex Caruso for Josh Giddey from the Bulls. They signed Isaiah Hartenstein away from the Knicks, from the center who was prominent in the playoffs. In the draft, they took Nikola Topic, knowing that he was injured. They took him at pick 12. Some people thought that he was a top 5 pick. And we had him as a top 5 pick up until it was announced he had an ACL injury. We moved him down a little. So I don't think they made a bad move at pick 12, but he's not going to help this year. Dylan Jones. Now that, they gave up like 5 second-round picks for Dylan Jones at pick 26. I didn't understand that one. I thought that was too much. Also, AJ Mitchell, the point guard, from, help me out here, UCSB. Yeah, UCSB.
Santa Barbara. Yep.
Yeah. And they took him at pick 38 and then signed him to a 2-way contract. I thought pick 38 was way too soon for him. I thought he was a fringe player, whether he's going to be drafted or not. So I expected him, if he went, to go in the 50s. So as you can see, I'm not totally sold on their draft. Then, of course, they lost Giddey. They lost Lindy Waters, which we said in the draft trade for pick 52. Gordon Hayward retired. Mike Muscala retired. Bismarck Biyombo wasn't re-signed. Keontae Johnson, friend of the show, it was a rookie out of Kansas State last year. He too, he was on a 2-way with them last year, is still a free agent. So my grade was B-. They basically, the significant player they lost was Giddey. All right, so they bring in 2 veterans, one to replace Giddey plus Hartenstein. That's a nice move. Their draft, I thought they could have done better. And that's why I think I gave them a B-. Maybe that's a little critical of that draft. But we'll start with you, Drew, because you gave them an A. So you were on the opposite end of the spectrum, and Cam was somewhere in between.
Yeah. So for me, for this team, with what they've done over the last couple of years, I think these are the types of moves that they've gone through the evolution of a rebuild, I think, damn near perfectly. Like, they've done it, I think, the right way. And I think they're now in that phase of, we need veteran pieces that fit, play now guys who give us things that we don't need our stars to do. And that's what Alex Caruso and Isaiah Hartenstein are. So I love those pickups. I think they got both of those guys. Those are impact players, whether they start, whether in the second unit. They're going to come in and give these guys depth. They're going to give them a huge boost. Caruso on the defensive end. I think Hartenstein gives you a little bit more traditional big next to Chet Holmgren's more kind of new age big. And again, he's an advanced metrics kind of darling. I do agree with Jones and Mitchell being kind of reaches, but I'm also like, okay, these guys have proven they kind of know what they're doing. I'll give them the benefit of the doubt. I don't agree with trading a bunch of second rounders for Dylan Jones, because I think Dylan Jones was a second round pick anyways. So I don't really do
Yeah. I mean, no offense to Dylan Jones. He's a friend of the show, but I just 5. If I
exactly
pick 26 was just not what I expected. And then 5 second rounders for him.
Yeah. If they took him 26 and just in theory, that was the pick, I could wrap my head around it. But to trade that much for him seems like a lot. But hey, they love him. They found a lot of guys from kind of, smaller, maybe more unknown players like a Lou Dort or a Jalen Williams from Santa Clara, that have popped and been huge pieces for them. But I think that Topic at 12 is a great pick, because again, they don't need him. This is a total hey, let him recover, let him get healthy. He was a guy that, like you said, we had him pretty high. A lot of people did. Get him at 12. If he sits for a year, get healthy, don't worry about it. We probably weren't going to rely on you heavily anyways. So I just give him an A because, again, for a team that like probably kind of smells the blood in the water, is seeing their chance to maybe try to go be that Western Conference representative in the finals. They went and got two guys that are going to help them do that. And if they overpaid a little bit for some rookies that they like, when you have the draft capital they do, I'm just a little less. And it wasn't like they traded any first round picks for him. It's like, hey, these guys have been hoarding picks for a couple of years now. If you really like Dylan Jones, I am a believer. Sometimes you got to go get your guys if you believe in them, and that's what they did. So I'm not going to super hold it against them. So yeah, I mean, I think Giddey's time was played out in OKC for a variety of reasons, so it's time to move on. And I look at the rest of the guys who left, and I'm not really like worried about any of them. He was probably the only kind of major loss. And personally, I think for trying to win a championship, you need an Alex Caruso, you need a Hartenstein more than you need a Josh Giddey, given what they have. So for them to kind of push the chips in, I'm all for it. So I give him an A.
Cam, you were somewhere in the middle, and Drew, I really do like the Hartenstein pickup.
Yeah.
I really do like that. And I think, for what they did for this year's team was very good moves. It's just I'm thinking also long term.
Sure, absolutely.
Right. But Cam, you were in the middle between Drew and I. What are you thinking?
Yeah, a big part of it for me, there's a few things. I love the pickup of Caruso and Hartenstein, just like you guys. Hartenstein especially is exactly what they needed. They're one of the worst offensive rebounding teams in the NBA. I wrote about this at the trade deadline. They needed offensive rebounding. And Isaiah Hartenstein, outside of Andre Drummond, is probably one of the best offensive rebounding bigs in the league right now. Perfect fit. And matter of fact, too, he can shoot the ball a little bit. He's got that nice floater game. I think he's going to be a seamless backup, if not a tandem big to go with Chet down low.
Right.
I worry a little bit with Caruso. I feel like he and Dort are like in so many ways carbon copies of each other.
Yes.
I might like Caruso's offense a little bit more. So to me, it makes me wonder if maybe Dort isn't a trade chip at some point this year. That's something on my mind. I think that could get weird because they're the same role, and I don't think you can play them together. So at some point, there's going to be some locker room dynamics there. I don't love the Topic pick. I didn't really love him in this draft process before he got hurt. I really worry about his shooting.
Yep.
And two, I think, as a more ground-bound driver, which is really what he is offensively, he's a great passer, don't get me wrong.
Mm-hmm.
In a lot of ways, he just feels like a smaller Giddey to me. Mm-hmm. And we've already kind of seen it played out that Giddey does not fit in with their offensive dynamic, with their spacing and their speed. So that worries me a little bit. Again, Dylan Jones is a big price to play. I like Dylan Jones. But yeah, the of course too, like second round picks are like candy to OKC right now, so they could care less how many they traded for him. If anything, they needed to trade some. I don't know. I think that's kind of why I fall in between. I like the pickups. I think it's going to help them in this playoff run. But I'm still wondering if they could have done a little bit more to maybe send them all the way over the top.
Yeah. I bumped my grade up listening to you guys from a B- to a B. We still have a wide feelings of opinion here, but I do really like the Hartenstein pickup. I do question the draft. All right, so we move on to Phoenix, and Phoenix quietly did a lot, if you ask me. The free agents they added they got Tyus Jones for really cheap. They also got Monte Morris for cheap. Mason Plumlee, I don't think they laid out much for him, and I think those are three quality players, with Jones being a starter level player for these teams. And I think it's something that they greatly needed because they didn't really have a starting quality point guard and used Devin Booker in that capacity. They also got EJ Liddell in the David Roddy trade. That was kind of a money-saving move, and Liddell, I believe his contract isn't fully guaranteed, so he might be a victim cut during training camp. In the draft, I thought they got two really good defensive type players. Ryan Dunn at pick 28, a forward from Virginia, and then they got center Oso Ighodaro at pick 40, and I had him rated about the same range as Dunn, so I really think they got two late first rounders here, with one first round pick and one second round pick. So of course the aforementioned Roddy went to Atlanta, Jock Landale signed with Houston, Eric Gordon signed with the Sixers, Drew Eubanks signed with Utah. They also had Thaddeus Young and Udoka Azubuike leave as free agents. So again, we had a pretty diverse group of grades here, ranging from B- to Cam to A- for me. And I was highly critical of everything Phoenix, has done over the last couple of years. But I think they got this right and are going to be in contention for the top in the Western Conference. So that's my opinion. And Cam, you gave them a B-, so I'm going to start with you.
Yeah, I started off with a B. I just still think, yes, they addressed point guard. I think that was the number one thing that they had to do this offseason. It was untenable having Booker bring the ball up. It was just a waste of his energy. And they got two really good players there. Tyus Jones, like you said, I think is starter level point guard in the league right now. Monte Morris is an excellent backup point guard. Excellent. Mason Plumlee, I also have a soft spot for him as well, Rich. I love sorry to keep bringing up Instagram trends, but I love the trend of showing a middle of the pack player's best highlights, and the title is always just man, Mason Plumlee was a problem. It's his mixtape is crazy. It's insane. You got to look it up if you haven't. Yes, it's a great depth addition. I still just have so many questions about this team's fit that I just don't think they could have even possibly addressed in one offseason. I think especially too, Nurkic was one of the strong points for this team.
And now they're talking about trading him.
They're talking about trading him. And even then they used the very little draft assets that they can acquire to get another center with Oso Ighodaro. And I just don't see it there. I think they have a lot of holes on the wing, especially given the fact that Kevin Durant hasn't exactly been the most healthy person the past few seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Same thing with Brad Beal, same thing with Devin Booker. I think they could have used those picks to shore up some of their wing depth. I think Ryan Dunn could maybe slot into that in some way. But again, his offense is so raw. I don't know if that's going to happen.
He can't shoot.
It's bad.
He can't shoot. But he's probably the best defender in this draft class. He's up there with Misi and to me, Ighodaro. When I think of defense in this draft class, those are the first three guys I think of.
Yeah. They're great, fringe pickups. I think Tyus Jones was huge for them, but I don't think it moves the needle much for me with this team. I don't see them as real contenders in my mind. I think they're in the Lakers-Clippers tier, honestly, of teams that could luck out with a crazy playoff run, but I just don't see them as real contenders and that's what their goal is.
All right. I do, when I look at their depth chart, the only person to me that excites me offensively coming off the bench is Grayson Allen, and he doesn't really excite me that much. But I do agree they do need some punch there off the bench. What they have really is a lot of defensive-oriented players like Royce O'Neal, Ryan Dunn, Okogie, so yeah, is Grayson Allen enough? The bench still does look thin. I agree, and maybe my grade was a little too generous. Drew, you were in between Cam and I. What are you thinking about the Suns?
Yeah, I think that like their playoff and championship aspirations are to be seen. I think a lot of that boils down like how healthy do they stay and all that. But for what they had to do in the offseason, they addressed their most pressing need, I think, really well. You get Tyus Jones and Monte Morris, which Cam already touched on. Great pickups. Easily could see Tyus starting and Monte being a really high level, solid backup. Looking at the guys they picked up, they're going all in on defense because they think they have a big three on offense. So I think, Dunn and Iguodala, I think it's good value, and I think they're going to bring that. At some point, they're going to need some offensive punch, so we'll see where it comes from. But I think a B plus because for the core that they have, they address their most pressing need. They bring in Mason Plumlee, which will help with the front court because center and point guard are the two positions they obviously need the most at because they filled up those three scoring wings. So I think they did what they're supposed to do with the resources that they had. It will be interesting to see, though, where if the big three don't stay healthy or someone has a scoring slump or Bradley Beal continues to decline, where are they going to pick up that scoring slack? But for what they had on the table and what they needed to address, I think they did that pretty well. So B plus.
Yeah. By the way, folks, Drew right now is outside falconing. He has some kind of hand gear, and I haven't seen the bird yet, but I know he's got the arm protective gear to catch the bird.
Pretty close, Rich. I'm puppy sitting for my parents. They just got a new puppy, so.
Oh, did you
I'm
hurt
actually
your wrist
puppy
though?
sitting.
That looked like a wrist.
No, he nipped at me while we were playing, and we're trying to get that. Obviously we don't want any sort of like food territory or toy territory,
Right.
territoriality coming through. So he kind of like nipped at me a little bit. So I was just trying to. I've done some dog training years ago, so I had to kind of bite his ass up a little bit.
Good.
Not knock that off before that becomes a thing.
Right. Love dogs. I couldn't live without having at least one dog in the house. All right, so we'll move on to the Portland Trail Blazers. And their off-season started off, and we were highly critical of this when we did the Eastern Conference, was the acquisition of Denny Avdia for a lot of stuff. I don't really feel like going into all the details, but I think we all were pretty much a consensus that Washington kind of fleeced the Blazers in the Denny Avdia move. Devontae Graham, who's on a non-guaranteed contract, was picked up for little to nothing from San Antonio. In the draft, they took Donovan Clingan, which was pretty widely predicted, though they do have a logjam now at center, and I really think they got to make a move there. The players they lost was Malcolm Brogdon, who was part of the Avdia trade, and also Abu. I'm not sure how you say his name, but he was Ibu Baji, who was actually a pretty high draft pick out of Spain. I think he was a second rounder, but he was on a two-way for them last year. Didn't get much playing time. Obviously, again, they have a logjam at center. He played in the summer league for Milwaukee and did pretty well. I'm kind of surprised nobody put him on a two-way because he's still a young kid. So our grades, though, not much differential. The three of us all said C. Caleb said C plus. He said feels directionless, but he likes the players they added. And we've said that more than once. We like the talent, but how does all this fit? So, Drew, I'll start with you. What do you think about what the Trailblazers did?
Yeah, I think that like Caleb's actually really spot on with that. Like, and probably the most we've seen. Like, I think Denny definitely has more to give than he was showcasing in Washington for sure. But I think they paid a pretty steep price for him. I think that Donovan Clingan was probably best player on the board at the point, and it sounded like that was a match that they were pretty locked into for a while. But you have DeAndre Ayton that you just made some moves for. Robert Williams is there if he can stay healthy. Like someone's got to be on the move. Yeah, I don't know. I give him a C because for these younger teams, I get it. Talent acquisition when you're kind of in the rebuild is important, right? Like you just got to stockpile picks, stockpile young guys, and you kind of a la the Rockets, a la the OKC, you'll figure it out as you go. It's better to have too many good young players than not enough. But when you couple that with like, yeah, you got a good young player, but you kind of paid a pretty big price for him, I start to kind of raise an eyebrow. Yeah, you got a good young player, but you have two other guys that play his role, and like, that's great that you got him, but if you're not going to play him while you're rebuilding, like, what's the point then if he's going to sit behind Ayton? Because you can't justify starting, in my opinion, as of right now, you can't justify sitting a nightly double-double, almost a 20 and 10 guy in Ayton for a rookie, even if you want Klingon to be the guy of the future. So that's what I wanted to see. It just, like the individual pieces, this move doesn't move the needle for them really in terms of getting better. In fact, they overpaid for some of them. And, maybe they're just kicking the can down the road, but, at least they got guys that I think are going to be good. It's just a matter, are they going to be good for the Trailblazers in 3 years? Or are they going to be good for someone else's roster is the question.
As I look at their depth chart, though, I'm like, who do you really like on this roster? I mean, Scoot Henderson?
Oh, personally,
I never, I'm not a Scoot Henderson fan. Shaden Sharp? I'm not a Shaden Sharp fan. So I don't really like anybody on this team. Like, who's going to be a champion on this team? Klingon's the only person to me that maybe has championship pedigree. And I think this team, I said it last year, I think this is the worst run organization in basketball. And I think they still are. Cam, you were right along. Have anything to add? I'm sure you probably don't like that statement. That's a little bold.
Rich, you still got that soundbite where I can't remember what player's name it was, but you would play it whenever one of us cussed.
Oh, yeah,
it was KP.
That was KP. KP.
Because what the fuck is this Denny Avdia trade, dude? What is this?
So bad. Cam, you missed our. Were you there for the initial reaction?
No, Cam was
awful.
Riding off into the sunset, literally, when we talked about the trade.
We gave him for that trade by itself. I think Rich and I were collectively like, yeah, that's an F trade. We'll figure everything out. Like, that was no bueno.
It's so bad. Like, and what I know Denny Avdia had a nice season last year. Like, he was a nice player buried on the Wizards, but everybody looks nice when they're buried on the Wizards. Everyone, except for Jordan Poole. I just even the 14th pick, they could have just kept it. That could have been so many guys.
Yeah,
like Carlton Bub Carrington looks good.
How about Connect?
Jared McCain. They could have taken him. I'm not big on McCain, but I would have taken him over Denny Avdia, baby.
Right, and actually, they could have got Yves Missi with that pick and not taken Klingon with their first pick if they wanted to.
I think this one hurts a little extra for me because low key, the Trailblazers are kind of my favorite team. They always kind of have been. Like, I have a soft spot for them.
I have a soft spot for him too, going back to Bill Walton, but yeah.
Man, just awful. The only reason I didn't put a flat F for this grade is because I like Klingon.
Right.
That's the only reason.
I'm just wondering, what's Mike Schmidt's going to do next? Are we going to see him back at ESPN? Because I think that's where he might be headed. Yeah. I mean, I know he's like the assistant general manager or assistant to player personnel. Yeah. All right. So we'll move on to Sacramento. Sacramento Kings. And they were pretty busy. Of course, the DeMar DeRozan trade, which we talked about a lot, they didn't have to give a lot to get DeRozan. The other free agent acquisition or veteran acquisitions weren't too exciting. They got Jordan McLaughlin from Minnesota as a free agent, and Jalen McDaniels, the older McDaniels, in a cost-saving move when they sent Davion Mitchell and Vrenzikov and the draft rights to Jamal Shed. Basically, they sent a bunch of stuff to Toronto, not because they wanted McDaniels, but to save money. But to me, that was just a really backwards move. And then they also friend of the show, Orlando Robinson, back from his days at Fresno State, was on the show. They have acquired him, but he's on a center. He's on a non-guaranteed contract, but they could use a third center, so he might stick with them. Rookies, Devin Carter at pick 13. We have no qualms with that, but He's injured. Didn't get to play in summer league, and they really need him. They really need him, in my opinion. Isaiah Crawford, a wing who we thought might get drafted out of Louisiana Tech, he was signed as a free agent, and he's on a 2-way contract. The players they lost beside Davion Mitchell were Harrison Barnes. Chris Duarte was sent to Chicago as part of the DeRozan acquisitions. Of course, Vesnikov, and then JaVale McGee is still a free agent. He might be another option for their third center. So grade-wise, I gave them a C-. Everybody else was a C. So we'll start with you, Cam. What are you thinking about what the Kings are doing?
This one's hard. I really like DeRozan. I still like him. The contract isn't great.
My question is, where's the defense coming from on this team? Who's going to play defense?
No one.
First NBA team to average 200 points a game. That's their goal.
Yeah,
seriously.
That's
they don't have. Devin Carter is the only defender that I can see on this depth chart. And seriously. So you're counting on a rookie to be your best defender, and he's hurt. He's not going to be. I don't think he's going to be available till like after Christmas. I believe. I could be wrong about that. He needed wrist surgery.
I still think that they thought they were trading for the other McDaniels. I mean, it's happened before, right? Like they.
That was wasn't that it was Marshawn Brooks and like somebody with the Grizzlies. I forget who. I forget who it was, but yes, it has actually happened before.
Yeah, Marlon Brooks and Marshawn Brooks. That's what it was.
I think that's what it was.
I don't know, man. I love Devin Carter. It sucks that he's injured because I think it would make me feel a little bit better. I know it's not supposed to be a part of the grade, but it is a little bit about it as well.
Yeah.
It would make me feel better. They're going to be really fun to watch. I don't know.
Yeah, they'll score points.
I don't know what I think the over-under with them is like 46 wins or something like that. And that just sounds
And this was a team a team last year we thought might, compete for the Western Conference title. And, they keep on bringing back these slugs, like Alex Len and Trey Lyles and Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if I was ever that high on him, Rich. That might be just a you thing, but
what's that?
I love them.
Yeah, I was very high on them last year, and I guess I ignored their defense.
I love watching them play, but man,
here's the thing: Duarte was a pretty good defender, and Davion Mitchell, good defender. Harrison Barnes, suitable. And so you had all these guys, and you throw in Vesnikov, who we expected to be more productive and get maybe more PT than he got. So they just traded away kind of like their whole second string. And, too.
It doesn't make sense to me with Vezenkov. I mean, they put in some real assets to get him to come over. Like they paid him well.
Yeah.
And gave up on him in like a month almost.
Yeah.
And why? Because he's not great on defense? Like
who on the team is
great on defense? Yeah, but
they traded away their two best defenders, Duarte and Mitchell.
Yeah, but like, why can't you lean into I don't know. Vezenkov will always kind of get to me. It seems like he's going back overseas, but maybe there's something else going on there. I don't know, but
yeah, whatever it was, he wanted to get the hell out and go back to Europe.
Yeah, I mean, too, like even down to like the Mitchell trade. Like they moved Shed in that trade.
Yeah.
And Shed, the guy that we talk about being a similar prospect or maybe even a better version of Davion Mitchell. I don't know.
Right.
So that doesn't make sense.
Certainly a cheaper version because they selected Davion Mitchell as a top 10 pick, maybe even as soon as 5. I don't remember where he went.
I think he was 7th in his year.
Yeah, but he was way overrated going into the draft.
100%.
ESPN had him as like the 5th best player in the draft. And I'm like, what are you doing? And now they just give him away. top 10 pick. Oh, here, you can have him. All right. Drew, this team is exasperating to me because they're kind of like one of those teams I always kind of root for, going back all the way back to the Peja Stojakovic days and the Chris Webber days, the white chocolate days. So any additional thoughts on the Kings?
I mean, you guys kind of covered it. Look, I think in a vacuum, like you could make the argument. I don't even think it's an argument. Like DeMar DeRozan in a vacuum is better than Harrison Barnes. So like you on paper, you think it's a big plus and all that. But I mean, I won't beat a dead horse here. They're not going to be able to stop anybody. They're in the tougher conference. They've gone kind of all in on that first core unit that they have. So they're an injury away from any of their major minutes guys to being in trouble. And I think we've seen it, like once the playoffs roll around and you're not going to always be able to bank on scoring 100 and 25, 30, 40 points, it gets tough. So I mean, they'll be fun to watch, but I think they kind of sold the soul to go try to put out the most purely talented starting five they could, and in the process depleted their second unit and have effectively removed defense from the equation. And whether we like it or not in the NBA, that is still half the game.
Right. All right, so we'll move on to the Spurs, and we really like what the Spurs did. Two B pluses, 2 A minuses. They acquired, of course, the aforementioned Harrison Barnes. Chris Paul comes in to probably be, I don't know if he's going to start, probably not, or maybe he does, but he's not going to. His minutes will be limited. I think he's been brought on as a kind of a coach. To bring along some of the young guys, teach them how to play. He'll be highly fun to watch in the pick and roll with Wemby. And then they had a nice draft with Stephon Castle at pick 4, Juan Nunez at pick 36, though they not signing him, and he will play this coming year in Barca, or in Spain for Barca. And that's a drafted stash pick. And Harrison Ingram was picked 48, forward out of North Carolina, and he will be on a 2-way contract. They didn't really lose much. Devontae Graham was sent to Portland in a minor trade, and Chetty Osman has not been re-signed. So A's and B's here. What do you think, Drew?
Yeah, I mean, like Harrison Barnes and Chris Paul are far from like massive needle movers to this team trying to push, for a big playoff run, but I think they're exactly what they need. They understand what they have in these young guys. And Barnes is kind of the quintessential average NBA player and kind of has been for like his whole career, of just a guy who's like just kind of steady, like give you 12 points a night, he'll give you 4 rebounds, 3 assists, and play okay defense. And that's kind of what a team needs in a veteran who, but as someone who's been around him, like he is a consummate pro, though. Like every stop he's made, he's
I
been
think a few years
regarded.
ago he was kind of like always in the running for 6 man.
Sure, like those like later years with the Mavs and earlier years with the Kings. Chris Paul, 100%. He's just going to be extension of Pop on the court. He is there to help the development of Wembanyama, just from, he'll get him a couple easy looks a game here, find him a couple times on the lob here or there. And then also, more importantly, for Vassell and Castle,
yes.
for them to just, I mean, they're going to have a top 5-ish point guard of all time, 6-7 point guard of all time. They're showing them how to be a professional on and off the court, how to play with a generational talent. I mean, this is a Chris Paul who's played with some really great players, some great lob threats. Like, he's going to teach them how to play that position, which is going to maximize Wemby as well. So I like the additions, despite them not being the most maybe earth-shattering on the court. I love Castle, like just the intensity in which he plays. Defensively, I think as the shot continues to work and the offense comes along, I think he's going to be really, really good. I think he's a great pick to pair with Wembanyama because he can kind of play that 1 or 2 spot. Really loved him. I'm not super familiar with Nunez, so I won't comment too much there. I think Ingram's another kind of he has kind of San Antonio Spur written all over him, at least to me. Like, I don't think they're ever expecting him to go be like some high quality starter at the 4, but the shot developed over his time in college to the point where it was usable. He is a big, strong guy. He's a really good IQ. I mean, I remember scouting when he was a freshman at Stanford in my backyard, and every time I took notes, there was a lot of things that, especially at Stanford, he struggled with. But one thing that always stood out was he was a great teammate and he had a really good IQ. Always rotated right, made the right pass, and that's totally a San Antonio Spur. So you don't lose anything. You get one of my favorite players, if not possibly my favorite guy in the draft. Probably he was definitely up there for me. And then you bring in guys that are going to just keep helping this team grow. Yeah, we gave him B+ as A-. I mean, I think that's exactly where they should be.
Kim, any thoughts?
I mean, first off, I'm happy for Pop, man. He's finally going to have some older guys to drink wine with while he's on the road. They're going to be, him and Barnes and Chris, they're going to be chopping it up at, whatever nice restaurant is in Toronto or wherever they are. I think it's a nice, I hate to use the word two timelines around Drew. I know it's a touchy subject, but it's a nice two timelines kind of play. Like, if Wembanyama is what, people around the league really feel like he is, I think, I've heard players even say like this guy's going to be an all-NBA player this season. I think I could probably pull the brakes on that just a little. But if he is, Chris Paul, Barnes, those are two guys that can actually help with a playoff run. If that is in the cards for the Spurs, either way, they're going to learn a ton, playing with those guys. The thing that kind of pushed me down from an A, I love Castle. Great pickup. I cannot forgive trading off of Dillingham. I just think, especially, bringing in Chris Paul, like what better player for a guy like Dillingham to play with and learn from than Chris Paul? Mm-hmm. And really, what better pairing can you get for a defensively challenged point guard than Victor Wembanyama? Can't think of anybody. That being said, I think Nunez is a nice pickup. And a very Spursy pickup, find the later on value international guard with potential, but nobody really knows too much about him just yet. I think there was a time where Nunez was way high on people's boards.
Yeah, it was higher.
Yeah.
Athleticism is a big concern now.
Yep. But he's got a great IQ, great passer.
Yep.
Somebody that could see really turn into something down the line. Ingram is a nice flexibility pickup, if he's going to be a depth piece. I like what they have in place. I know a lot of people are really low on the surrounding talent, but Sohan's great. I think he really has a nice trajectory. I think he has a great fit with Wembanyama, and Devin Vassell's legit. It's not always pretty, but he can really put the ball in the basket. It has some of those guard skills too. So
watch out for CD Sissoko.
Yes,
I really liked. Yeah. I thought he looked good in summer league.
He did, yeah. I liked him in the draft too. Another French player too. Add that into the list. But man, yeah, I can't get too ecstatic about it. I think if they had kept Dillingham, I would be. Maybe use that Nunez pick on somebody else, but it's still really solid. They're moving in the right direction. I think the two timelines thing could get a little funky down the line. What do you do with Chris Paul on these next couple contracts? Is he going to go minimum? I don't know. That's kind of weird. But still a great offseason for the Spurs.
Yeah. All right. We'll move on to the Utah Jazz. And we really like the Jazz's draft. But on free agency, they basically acquired third stringers for the most part. Drew Eubanks at center, Svi Mikhailuk at wing, Patty Mills yesterday was signed as point guard, and Oscar Shige was also recently signed on a two-way. So in the draft at pick 10, they had Cody Williams, point guard, Isaiah Collier from out of USC, who we thought it was a steal at 29, Kyle Filipowski, who at least I thought was somewhat of a steal at pick 32. Also, so you had what I considered to be three players that were probably top 20, top 25, be taken at 10, 29, and 32. The players they lost, Chris Dunn we talked about him a lot. He went to the Clippers, and Taylor Horton Tucker remains unsigned. So Cam, what do you in our collective group grades, we liked these guys, 2 A minuses, 2 B pluses. Cam, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I got to add into you froze for a second there, Rich, but I'll throw this in there. But just to, they re-signed Lauri Markkanen. It looked like they were going to trade him for most of the offseason. That's a positive move. I think that would have been a mistake to move off of him. Love the draft. Everything is about the draft other than that. Cody Williams looked legit in summer league, shot the ball at a very high level and showed some more playmaking than I think he got the chance to showcase at Colorado. I still really have a lot of faith in Collier. I think, it was a little up and down summer league for him. Didn't quite carve out the right role, I think, with that team. But I love the upside with him. And Filipowski, I think he probably maxes out as kind of like Kelly Olynyk sort of player.
Yeah, but very good.
It works well for them in Utah. They liked Olynyk a lot last season. It's not like mind blowing, but they made the right moves at each position of the draft. And I think that was what they needed to do. They re-signed Markkanen. That's an A- for me.
Yep. Drew, any additional thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm at a B plus. We've talked a lot about their draft, and I think we all collectively, just for the draft alone, gave them A's. Honestly don't really care about their new players signees at all. I don't really expect any of these guys to be in the mix when it actually matters. I would love to see Shiwei get some burn. Just the college basketball fan in me just loves it when those like college basketball stars that mean a lot to us get a chance, even just some sort of a chance. The reason I'm not at an A, I'm very curious to see, like, again, Cam mentioned 2 timelines. There is an element of that here a little bit. You have Sexton. I agree with Markkanen. That's why I want him as a Warriors fan. I think he's such a unique offensive weapon. But like I look at other guys like John Collins and Colin Sexton and Jordan Clarkson. It's like, okay, like what are we doing with like that trio of players? Like those guys are kind of just in the way. You have a lot of young guys here. Like I'm just looking at this one projected depth chart here, and they got Keontae George at the 1, Sexton at the 2, Markkanen at the 3, Taylor Hendricks at the 4, and Collins at the 5. And I'm like, okay, cool. But then like, what about Walker Kessler? You know what I mean? Like you have Jordan Clarkson and Colin Sexton, like that gets in the way of guys like Cody Williams, Isaiah Collier potentially getting into the rotation. So that's where I'm at a B plus. I totally see some of those guys on the move. I did think they were going to I thought if they traded Lauri, they were just going to kind of blow it up and all those guys would be out the door. They're keeping Lauri, so they see him as a piece, which honestly I get. But those other 3, I think there needs to be some movement. Like we're going into year 3 of Walker Kessler. Is he going to start or is he not? Like we know he can defend. Yeah, he's somewhat limited offensively, but we know he's a defensive guy. So that's why I'm at a B plus. Love the draft. Don't care about their free agency. Just very curious to see if they I don't think Jordan Clarkson and Colin Sexton are guys, and John Collins are guys that you should be impeding the progress of really nice young pieces that we all like that they picked up. So we'll see what they do, but I mean, if they stand pat, they have a relatively deep roster, and if they make moves, they can maybe go get a superstar to help these young guys accelerate, or just pick up more draft picks and go the OKC route.
I agree. There is a logjam there. Things have to be sorted out. I think they have to figure out who's the who are the stars and who are the role players. And yeah, right now it's going to be kind of tough to do with players like John Collins and Colin Sexton there. So yeah. All right. So that wraps up today's show, folks. As always, I want to thank our listeners, and I want to thank our special guest, Cade Pierce, for joining us. If you ever miss an episode, you can get caught up at hoopsprospects.com. Also, if you'd like to send us a question for the mailbag, we haven't gotten a mailbag question. I think I'm starting to feel hurt, folks. You got to send us a question. Please email it to admin at hoopsprospects.com. We also take questions on social media, on Twitter at Hoops Prospects, on Instagram at The Hoops Prospects, and on Facebook at Hoops Pros. We will be back next week to begin our college conference previews. That's right, folks. We're going to start talking college basketball for a while, and we'll be talking all the way up to NBA training camp about the different conferences and previewing those. And we'll have we should have at least one special guest next week. I also want to add that during going up to training camp, we're going to be posting basically kind of like a review of what we've talked about in these off-season grades for each team. And we will also, I don't know, we'll probably do a condensed article about all our conference previews and our college basketball preview, which we usually do like around mid-October when the leaves are changing. So any final thoughts, gentlemen?
I need hoops back. I'm already suffering from withdrawals with the Olympics being over. I'm like bored. I'm not a baseball guy.
You can go on Peacock. You can go on Peacock and watch some of those events that you didn't catch. That's what I've been doing.
Then I have to get Peacock though, man.
That's also true. I don't really want Peacock.
Oh, I thought it was free. I thought it was free.
Is it? I knew they have a free. They do have a free.
I know
like
we're paying.
variation.
I know we're paying for it, but it's only like I think $7 or $8 a month.
It's actually not terrible compared
but I
to
want
the
to
other
see.
ones.
I do it because they got the NFL and now they got college basketball. So
Right.
I don't know what's free and what's not, but you should check into the free version. You might be able to see a lot with that.
Maybe we can get on Peacock.
Yes.
We're an
or at
entertaining
least
bunch.
we
They're gonna
definitely
need
can get on
something
Barstool because those morons.
Oh my God, they need it. They could use a bump from us for sure.
Oh my God, do they know anything about sports, or do they just sit around cracking teenage level jokes?
I'm pretty sure those guys have no idea who Oscar. If I asked them about Oscar Shiwe or like Ryan Dunn or Osei Godoro, they'd probably just like shrug.
They'd be like, "Oh, dude, I did a keg stand with him."
Yeah, he's a soccer player, right?
Bro.
I'm just loathing. Last year, they had one of the tournaments, one of the preseason like November tournaments that had like 4 teams in it, and I had to listen to. This year, maybe I'm just going to turn the sound down.
I've done that. If I don't like the broadcasters, out like when we were doing overtime elite stuff, man, I was just watching mute. I was like, I can't listen to this.
I did the same. Overtime elite was very annoying. It still is actually. All right, guys. We will talk next week, and good luck with your falconing, Drew. Be careful of those talons.
All right, guys.
All right.
See you guys later.
All right, see you guys.